Can you hear me okay? Okay. We're going to call this meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. Please stand and join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call, please.
Commissioner Howard.
Here.
Commissioner Howdy.
Here.
Commissioner Johnson.
Here.
Commissioner Dahlgren. Here. Commissioner Herzog.
Here. Welcome, everyone. Today is December 8th, Planning Commission meeting. Today's Planning Commission meeting is open to in-person attendance and may also be observed online through the Placer County website. In an effort to encourage the public to engage in the process, our public comment for this meeting will be offered in person and remotely. If you would like to make public comment virtually, please raise your hand with the hand icon at the bottom of the page. If you're calling in, please press *9 to raise your hand. Please be prepared to speak at the time I open public comment for the specific item you would like to address, which can be public comment for matters not on the agenda, a consent item, or one of the timed items. Each commenter will be entitled to 3 minutes of comment time. Thank you for your patience as we work to preserve the safety and health of all meeting participants and ensure that each citizen who wishes to comment has the opportunity to do so. And just be advised that our meetings are recorded. We'll go ahead and move forward to Chris Schmidt, Interim Planning Director report.
Thank you, Commissioners. Chris Schmidt, the Planning Services Division. A few items of note, recent items that the board supervisors, including on November 29th, the board did give us direction to start the multi-year process of updating the countywide general plan. We'll be bringing a information item to the commission in probably February or so, outlining what that effort will be and how it will roll out over the next first year, and then our long-range plan of updating our 2013 general plan. On December 6th, the board of supervisors approved Regional University Phase 1 that you recommended approval on October 27th. They also gave staff direction to move forward with code compliance updates. So we'll be changing how we implement our code compliance team. Next week, we get 3 items that the commission recommended approval on. At the board, Brake Brothers, the Sheridan Brake Shop, Grand Bay Medical on Douglas Boulevard, and then also Placer Conference Center, which is in the Sunset area. Next week, your commission is meeting on Thursday. There's a direct EIR hearing for Project 8 Winery in Penryn. We'll also be giving an overview of the county's development process as an informational item. After the holiday break, we're back in Auburn on January 12th. There will be another direct EIR hearing for a large subdivision of the Dry Creek area. And then we're back up in the Ottawa area on January 19th for the Palisades direct EIR hearing. And with that, I can't really answer any questions.
Can you say our next December meeting one more time?
Next Thursday.
Next Thursday,
Auburn.
and we're discussing the winery?
Project 8 Winery.
And that's at 3 o'clock
No,
or 10 o'clock?
10 o'clock.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Chris. We'll go ahead and open up public comment for matters that are not on our agenda. Anyone here in person wish to speak or provide public comment on items that are not on our agenda? There's a little delay online, so I pause just to make sure online people can raise their hand if they need to. Still no?
No.
Yes, okay. Okay, we're gonna move on to our consent items, commissioners. Do you wish to pull the one consent item, which is our minutes? No. Anyone from the public wish to pull consent agenda item? No one online?
No.
Okay. We can entertain a motion for
I'll make
consent.
Sorry,
That's okay.
I'll make a motion to approve consent agenda.
Okay, I want to clarify, that was for the November 10th meeting.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll second that.
Okay, first and second, we'll do a roll call vote.
I have a first from Commissioner Powers and a second from Commissioner Dahlgren. Commissioner Powers,
Aye.
Commissioner Howdy,
Abstain, I wasn't at the meeting.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes?
Commissioner Dahlgren,
Yes.
Commissioner Herzog.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, we're good with time. For a timed item, we're gonna move on to our first timed item.
Oh,
No.
public comment? Did we answer public comment? I can.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Sorry about that.
Okay, we're gonna move on to our first timed item, Mount Pluto Telecommunication Facility Conditional Use Permit. Members of the public may now raise their hands. Press *9 if you're calling in to begin queuing for public comment on this item, which will not begin until the item presentation is complete. Janie Balvin will be presenting on this item.
Thank you. Good morning, Planning Commissioners. I'm Janie Balvin, Associate Planner. I'm here to present the Mount Pluto Telecommunication Facility Conditional Use Permit. The project location is up on Forest Service Road that winds up to the top of the North Star California ski area to this 5.1 acre semi-triangular shaped parcel that is part of the larger ski resort. The proposed location of the facility on this parcel is adjacent to the Backside Express Chairlift Top Terminal and Summit Lodge, 400 feet to the southwest of an existing 120-foot tall lattice tower. The nearest residences are 1.5 to 2.5 miles away near the North Star Village and at the North Shore of Lake Tahoe. Here's that same map of the vicinity with a zoning overlay. The property is zoned North Star Recreation, where transmission and receiving facilities require a conditional use permit. Properties to the north are zoned forestry, to the west are forestry and timber production zone. And both south and east are the same as the project site, which is North Star Recreation. The areas rendered in yellow here are the residentially zoned areas on the North Shore of Lake Tahoe. The project is a new communication facility proposed approximately 400 feet to the southwest of an existing facility. Both the existing and new facilities are 120-foot tall lattice towers with antennas at the top, which extend another 16 feet to a total height of 136 feet above grade. The proposed tower is replacing the existing tower. You'll see at the top of the screen here the existing tower, and the proposed is at the lower left with the top terminal of the Backside Express Chairlift in between. The structures to the right of the screen is the lodge facilities at the summit of North Star. Here's a elevation view of the facility, the tower and shelter. The new equipment shelter contains the supporting equipment and is designed to match the finished details of the Summit Lodge. There's a slight correction to the project description that you see in the staff report and condition of approval number 1, in that the shelter is proposed to be 1 story and not 2. The equipment shelter has a roof extension overhanging an emergency backup generator, which is enclosed by an 8-foot tall chain link fence with slats. Area plan consistency, development standards like setbacks and height, noise, and tree removal were analyzed for potential impacts from the project. The project is a replacement facility of the same size, type, and intensity that hasn't presented problems for the property owner in their operation of the ski resort or the surrounding properties, the fire district, or the Truckee Tahoe Airport since it was established in the 1970s. So staff's review of the project was straightforward and no potential impacts were identified, and the findings to approve a conditional use permit can be made. But I can speak further on any of those details if there are questions. The Tahoe Basin Design Review Committee considered the project on September 27th of 2022 and discussed the exterior finishes of the structures, which are designed to match that Summit Lodge at the top of North Star. They asked that the fence proposed around the generator be tall enough to screen the equipment, and the applicant revised their project to accommodate for that, increasing the fence to 8 feet tall. The following month, the project was presented to the North Tahoe Regional Advisory Council, where questions came up regarding aesthetics from public viewpoints, and photographic simulations were further analyzed. The NITRAC voted 5-0 to take action to recommend to the Planning Commission to approve the conditional use permit as proposed. Staff didn't receive any public correspondence on this project in response to public notices for those 2 meetings or for this meeting today. Before I conclude with my recommendation slide, I have 2 corrections to the recommended conditions of approval. Firstly, because of the last minute change regarding the equipment shelter, condition number 1 should be amended to read that the equipment building is 1 story instead of 2 stories. And secondly, because the applicant has questions about the TRPA jurisdictional boundary line in relationship to this project location, staff requests that condition number 13 is amended to read, should it be determined that at the time of building permit submittal, the project location is in the basin, then the applicant shall be required to obtain approval from the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency, or for the proposed, the TRPA that their agency does not require a permit for the project. So staff recommends that the Planning Commission take the following actions. Find that the project is categorically exempt from review under CEQA pursuant to provisions of section 15302 of the California Environmental Quality Act guidelines and section 18.36.040 of the Placer County Environmental Review Ordinance, class 2, replacement or reconstruction, and approve the conditional use permit to allow for the construction of a wireless communication facility consisting of a 120-foot tall lattice tower, 136 feet to top of antennas, with attached antennas and associated equipment, a 1-story equipment building, and a generator surrounded by an 8-foot chain link fence, all contained within a 4,180 square foot lease area on a 5.1 acre parcel located at 8610 113th Road at the top of Mount Pluto in the North Star, California ski resort in the Truckee area. Supported by the findings and subject to the conditions of approval in the staff report, except for conditions number 1 and number 13 as amended here today. And with that, I can answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Jamie. Commissioners, questions for staff?
No.
I can't see Commissioner Dahlgren, but I just assume that she'll speak up if she has some. She's online.
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Okay. Is Tim Page here? Would you like to make some comments?
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Tim Page with Crown Castle, applicant for Vail, and Crown Castle owns and operates the tower. The first thing I'd like to do is thank you so much for arranging a perfect Lake Tahoe stellar day outside. It's absolutely stunning. Second, I'd really like to thank Janie and Stacy, who've been absolutely wonderful through this rather long and lengthy process. We have read all the conditions of approval, fully in agreement with them. I'm happy to take any questions, comments, concerns at this time.
Okay. Any questions from the applicant?
No.
For the applicant?
No.
Okay, thank you. We'll let you know.
Thank you.
We'll move to public comment. I'll go ahead and open up public comment for this item. Anyone here in person wish to speak? Anyone online? Okay, not seeing anyone, I'm going to close public comment and I'll bring it back to the commission for discussion. If we have questions or clarification we need, we can bring other people up.
I would make a motion that we find the project as categorically exempt from review under CEQA pursuant to provisions of the Section 15302 of the California Environmental Quality Act guidelines and Section 183640 of the Placer County Environmental Review Ordinance.
Second.
The first and second to roll call vote.
I have a first from Commissioner Howdy and a second from Commissioner Powers. Commissioner Powers,
Aye.
Commissioner Howdy,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Dahlgren,
Yes.
Commissioner Herzog.
Yes.
Thank you.
Before we get to the second item, if I could make a recommendation, in light of the modifications to condition 1 and
13.
I would suggest that the motion be to approve the conditional use permit with those modified conditions subject to the findings in the staff report, not the text that's up there.
Also move that.
Second.
First and second, we'll do roll call vote.
I have a first from Commissioner Howdy and a second from Commissioner Powers. Commissioner Powers,
Aye.
Commissioner Howdy,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Dahlgren,
Yes.
Commissioner Herzog.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, the decision of the planning commission may be appealed by anyone who appeared at today's hearing or provided a comment, or anyone that submitted written comments on this item. The appeal must be filed within 10 days of today's date and shall be accompanied by a filing fee of $688. We're gonna move on to our second timed item. Clausen subdivision modification. Members of the public may now raise their hands, press *9 if you are calling in to begin queuing in for public comment on this item, which will not begin until the item presentation is complete. Amy Cornelius will be presenting on this item. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Amy Cornelius. I'm an associate planner. On behalf of the applicant, I would like to request a continuance for the Clausen subdivision modification, PLN 22-00411. The purpose of this continuance request is to give the applicant and owner more time to consider concerns voiced by a neighbor, which were received in a letter earlier this week. Staff is in support of this request, and now I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Comment or?
Yes, you would still provide public comment on the question of the continuance, and you need a vote from the commission on that issue as well.
Okay.
Before we, is anyone here in the public in person wishing to speak on this item? And then anyone online? We do have one, okay. So we can, do you have questions for staff on this item?
No.
No, okay. I think I'll go ahead and open public comment, and then we'll see after that. So we have someone online.
Mr. Roberts, go ahead and unmute, and you'll have 3 minutes to make your comments.
Thank you very much. My name is Jim Roberts. I am one of the owners of the house across the street at Lot 88, and we do appreciate working with Amy and having discussions with her after we found out about this proposed modification a week ago, and that's the first we ever heard about it. So we would like to work with Amy and the owners to see if there's a resolution that can meet the needs of the owner and ourselves, and we expect to reach out to them and have discussions as quickly as possible so that this can be put back on the docket at a reasonable time. And I'd be happy to answer any questions about our objection if needed. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yes. Mr. Mather, go ahead and unmute your mic, and you'll have 3 minutes to make your comment.
Thank you. My name is Todd Mather. I am the architect, and I represent Dr. Bill Clausen with this agenda item. Been nice to work with Amy on this. We do appreciate the consideration for continuing this item so that we can work with the Roberts family, as you just heard, as well as the HOA. There's some lingering questions that are out there that we need to address with the HOA as well. So we would appreciate the continuance, if that's our choice. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, we'll close public comment and bring it to the commission to consider the request for continuance.
I'd make a motion that we continue this item to a date uncertain.
Second.
Okay, first and second, roll call vote on that.
I have a first from Commissioner Howdy and a second from Commissioner Powers. Commissioner Powers.
Aye.
Commissioner Howdy.
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
Commissioner Dahlgren. I saw everything. Commissioner Herzog.
Is that acceptable?
We actually get her, statement on the record, please.
Robin, can you unmute? Can't hear.
Hold on, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, I said yes.
Thank you. Commissioner
Yes.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Wow. Apologies for that. Our next item isn't until 10:30, so we're gonna take a 10-minute break. It looks like there's people, just so I can say, there's people that want to come in. If you guys don't mind, if you have a seat available, making sure there's room for that, so people can come in and sit down, that'd be great. We have a 10-minute break and we'll resume at 10:30. Okay, we're gonna get started. If you don't mind taking a
It is.
seat. If
I'm
you're
ready to
just
record.
arriving,
You can
we
pass
have
your
a
clients
sign
on
up
to
sheet
me, I'll
over here.
consult
If you
for
want to
you.
speak on this item, and
That's all
we'll
I've seen
introduce
you
it.
doing lately too.
I'm not sure, are there seats available?
Mm-hmm.
I just want to make sure we can get everyone. We have some seats available here. It looks like, I don't know how many more people are out there, but
It's a pretty packed
we want
house.
everyone to be able to come in. It looks like there's a line that goes around the corner.
We need more.
So
chairs.
Well, we need more chairs. Well, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Before I start this item, I want to get everyone in the room.
Get my top off of my water.
There you go.
I'll go look for you later. I'll go bring.
Okay.
So do we have any seats available?
One here.
There's like 3 or 4 here, so if you want to come on in. Got about 2.
Also, if you okay, we can also do another row in the front
Right.
if we need to.
Let me see if I can.
Yeah, there's a chair right there at the end.
Oh, there's a chair right here. That's good. Okay, you guys good?
I'm
I
good.
think we're good. Clayton, I think we're good.
We only have about 2.
You have your bulletproof vessel in your head. Your head. Nothing else is new, right?
Yeah, sure.
You and I have been doing this our whole careers.
Exactly.
I've dealt with it my entire career.
Yeah. And I've dealt with it in Tahoe my entire career. So.
Poor thing. I dealt with.
Hey guys, your mics are hot.
Yeah.
Sorry.
If you're online listening, thank you for your patience. We're getting the room situated and we're going to bring in a few more chairs and we'll get started.
Looks like there's a couple chairs right there. 3 chairs.
Yeah. We do have chairs up here.
Two seats available
Yeah.
here.
If you want to come up here.
Front of the class.
Mm-hmm.
There's one there too.
I'll go ahead and let me introduce it. We're going to go and move on to our third timed item, Tahoe Basin Area Plan, Economic Sustainable and Housing Amendments, Tahoe Basin Area Plan Amendment. Members of the public may now raise their hands, press *9 if you're calling in. To begin queuing in for public comment on this item, which will not begin until the item presentation is complete. Before we have planners share, we have county council that wants to share something.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioners. Yes, so as you're aware, since this item has been posted, there's been a decent amount of comments that have come in. Some of them expressing concern about the extended amendments and the short amount of time to review and digest these amendments and get up to speed on them prior to today. So especially with something like a area plan amendment, this is something we want to make sure that the community has a strong understanding of the changes, the methodology, the reasoning behind those changes, the impact of those changes to the community. So in light of that, what I would ask that you do today is that we treat today's item as an informational item, where staff would go forward and provide their presentation. We would take public and commissioner comments, and then staff would go back and analyze those comments, review things, perform outreach if needed to community members, do all of that stuff, and then at a later date, bring this item back for the actual vote and determination on the amendments. So procedurally, what we'd be asking for is that the commission not vote on this item today, but listen to the staff report, listen to public comment, provide input as well, and then we will be bringing this back in the future to those who make a decision on it. So, yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, good. Well, do you want to ask questions about that?
I just wanted to say thank you. I appreciate that. I feel like we're not supposed to do that. Appreciate a little more time and more community involvement. So thank you, council.
Okay, so I would like to still.
I would agree.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was gonna piggyback on what Bridget had said, is that I agree. I read the whole packet and all the comments coming in from the community, and I feel like I personally even need more time. So I would love to hear what everyone has to say today and be able to digest this a little bit more. So I appreciate that as well.
Okay, good. I still.
Who was that? Sorry, that was Commissioner Dahlgren. She's appearing on Zoom, but because of the technological capabilities, we can't show the presentation and her Zoom appearance at the same time. So she's appearing by Zoom and listening. Thank you.
No problem. I'd like to hear the full presentation today and treat it as a presented item. So still as an info item, but I'd like for staff to present and do public comment and make sure that we give everyone what they need. So
We have more chairs in front if anybody's standing in the hallway.
right. We have more chairs up here that we just added. Please come and sit, use these chairs. They're not reserved. These are available for you.
And is Zoom opening? Because nobody's getting on Zoom. Open. It's Zoom. A lot of people think the link is dead. I've got a whole bunch of people.
Yeah, we'll make sure Zoom is accessible. Okay, well, let's move forward. If commissioners are okay with that, with the presentation. And we'll look forward to the information, and we will have public comments, so that's, and we do have a sign up. If you just arrived, we have a sign up if you'd like to speak today. We'd like to have your name on that. We'll still give you an opportunity. If your name is not on that list, we'll still give you an opportunity to speak. So we are gonna have Stacy Wydra and Emily Stetzer that will present on this item.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the Commission. I'm actually Crystal Jacobson, and I'm the Deputy Director of the Community Development Resource Agency in Tahoe. So I'm just gonna kind of have some opening remarks, and then I'll turn it over to Emily and Stacy. So I want to thank you for coming to Tahoe today. We really appreciate you making the trek and being here with the community today. I think the community thanks you as well. So we are here today with a team of county staff who prepared the package of amendments before your commission today. And as Clinton said, we've received a lot of comment, and so I too think it's a great idea to continue it and kind of review that comment and provide the public more opportunity to weigh in. So I want to provide some opening comments and provide a little context around the amendments, and then I'll introduce staff and hand it off to them to walk through the presentation. And first I wanted to touch on the why behind these amendments, why we're bringing them forward to your commission and to the board for consideration. The amendments here today before your commission are in response of really a lack of redevelopment and reinvestment that we're hoping to see in our town centers as a result of adoption of the area plan. So the area plan was adopted back in late 2016 by our board, and then early 2017 by the TRPA governing board. It was intended to implement the regional plan with a vision of really shifting development into town centers to remove development off of sensitive lands throughout the basin, and really helping to spur reinvestment in our town centers. So in Placer, we have two town centers, Kings Beach and Tahoe City. We have seen significant public investment, so public investment into the town centers. Here in Kings Beach, you'll see the streetscape improvements. If you've all been coming up to Kings Beach for years, you know that those are fairly new. And there are a lot of public dollars put into those streetscape improvements. And underneath those improvements are water quality improvements. So we've got infiltration improvements help to address lake clarity. And so with the adoption of the area plan, our board's goal and TRPA's goal for the regional plan was really to build upon that kind of reinvestment and set up a regulatory framework to encourage what we call environmentally beneficial redevelopment in our town centers, so that you see private land owners coming in with private dollars to also invest and reinvest in the town centers. And with those redevelopment projects come environmental improvements. That, there's best management practices that they have to implement. And so you get that same type of reinvestment on the private parcels in the town centers. So fast forward, that's the intent, right, is to spur that. So fast forward to now, unfortunately, we have not seen that vision come to reality. We have a lot of projects in the hopper, and there's been a video going out around, some of you may have seen it. There are a lot of projects that are in the process right now. And that video shows that. A lot of them have struggled to move forward. And so over the past few years, our CEO prepared a study for BAE, and Emily will touch on it a little bit more in her presentation. But the purpose of the study was to better understand the why behind the lack of reinvestment. Why aren't we seeing that reinvestment in our town centers that we hoped to see as part of the area plan adoption? So really that study provided a set of recommended actions that the county could take. And one of those actions was to look at the TVAP policy document. So the TVAP is two documents. It's a golden policy document and implementing regulations, which is like our zoning ordinance for Tahoe. So one recommendation was to look at those and explore ways to make some refinements to help encourage redevelopment and get some of these projects moving so that we can see that reinvestment. So that's really the purpose of these amendments. We are responding to that study. So the amendments are really intended to harness that kind of redevelopment that's aligned with the regional plan goals and the goals of our board. They do incorporate feedback from years of meetings that we've had with various different organizations, as well as feedback from applicants, business owners, startup entrepreneurs, and then even our planners who have been working with the document since 2017. and I've kept track of the problem areas of the code or, typos that need to be addressed, that sort of thing. So they're really small tweaks and refinements. You may hear today and in the correspondence that you've received to date that some folks believe the amendments are wholesale changes and that they're concerned about increased density. I do want to point out, I think it's important to note that we're not proposing to modify any density standards. So what those are the standards that regulate how many units you can have per acre on a parcel. So for example, how many tourist accommodation units or how many residential units that you can have on a property. We are not proposing any change there. The TBAP, the Tahoe Basin Area Plan, otherwise known as the TBAP, the density and the build out that were analyzed as part of that is not changing. We are bound by the TRPA carrying capacity set forth in the regional plan that was adopted and the strict growth control measures from TRPA, and we're not proposing any change there. I do want to point out we've prepared these amendments working side by side with TRPA staff to ensure that the amendments are consistent with the TRPA regional plan. And then one last thing I want to point out is that you will see that we framed this up as a repeal and replace of the TBAP. This does not mean that the package includes wholesale changes, but rather that the refinements are sort of peppered throughout the two documents. Again, track changes, there's some cleanups, there's some new policy and some tweaks to standards. But after discussing this with the team on how best to frame up the resolution and the ordinance is going to go to the board, it was decided that the repeal and the replace is the best approach because they're peppered throughout the document. So I did want to point that out. And with that, I want to introduce Emily Setzer, Stacy Wydra, who have co-led this effort and will be presenting today. I also want to thank them for their dedication and hard work on this. It's not, anytime you bring forward an update to a plan or a zoning code, it's not easy. And so I really do want to thank them for their work. And then I want to point out, we also have Nick Martin from the County Tahoe Executive Office in the audience today. He's available to answer questions them of Nick. And I'd also like to introduce John Hester, sitting here. He's the Chief Operating Officer and Deputy Executive Officer of the TRPA. He would like to speak today, and if okay with your commission, we would like to request that he would speak following staff's presentation and before you open up public comment, if that works for you. And he wants to provide a little context around how these amendments fit within the regional plan, and then also just answer any questions that your commission might have. So with that, I'd like to thank you again for your time, for joining us here in Tahoe, and I'm going to turn it over to Emily to present. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Emily Setzer, Principal Planner at Placer County in our Tahoe City office. I'll be starting off the presentation and then handing it over to Stacy to go through some more of the details. And thank you for the introduction, Crystal. So just as a reminder, I know many of the people in this room, including the commissioners, have seen parts of this presentation before, so thank you for listening to us again. But the amendments we're bringing forward today are truly a product of, in response to years of feedback from the community. It is in response to comments from organizations that we interact with all the time that represent our communities, like the North Tahoe Business Association, the Tahoe City Downtown Association, the North Lake Tahoe Resort Association, Mountain Housing Council from a housing perspective on a regional level, and also on a even broader regional level from a housing perspective, the Tahoe Living Working Group, who we work with closely to revitalize and redo some of the TRPA code related to housing. What we've heard through all of this feedback, and this is years of feedback, is that our code has a lot of barriers. It's difficult for business owners to come in or people who want to develop housing. It's very difficult to get through our barriers. We have strict development standards and site improvements and zoning restrictions that are harder to get through than many of our neighboring areas, which is why we have not seen the redevelopment that was expected after the area plan was adopted. So I'll go through what these amendments attempt to accomplish. Again, we're really focusing on that environmentally beneficial redevelopment. It sounds counterintuitive, but without the redevelopment, we do have things like more runoff, so I'll go through this. Right now, we have an aging, dilapidated town centers for Kings Beach and Tahoe City. We have a lack of updated quality lodging. We have not seen in North Lake Tahoe one new hotel since the 60s. We also have a lack of housing for our local workers. And probably because of the lack of hotels, we've seen an influx of short-term rentals, which everyone knows. And because we have a lot of second home ownership and short-term rentals, and we haven't had much new housing development, we have a lack of housing that's available for our local workers today. We also have, in some areas, a lot of vacant commercial spaces. I know the North Tahoe Business Association about a year and a half ago conducted an assessment of Kings Beach downtown, and they noted close to 30 commercial vacant spaces just in the downtown area alone. And what I've heard from our business associations is that a lot of businesses come in, they talk like they want to come in and start a business here, and then they're unable to find a space that is appropriate or that is up to code, and then they relocate elsewhere. So we don't get a lot of new businesses. They've gone to Truckee, they've gone to Reno. What does this mean from an environmental perspective? This leads to our current environment, which lets runoff into the lake, which affects lake clarity. We have more of those short-term rentals in our neighborhoods because we don't have the lodging in our town centers. We would like to see that lodging in our town centers so our visitors can drive here, park, and ideally walk around, causing less congestion. We have more congestion. We have a lot of workers commuting daily into Lake Tahoe because they have left the region. And then our town centers lack vibrancy and walkability. What are we trying to see? We're trying to get a diverse business sector and new lodging products in our town centers. We're trying to get new workforce housing or open up the workforce housing that we have available today. And we're trying to really support that year-round economy. We have heard from business owners that the shoulder seasons can be tough around here because we don't even have the full-time population that we used to have to support the businesses, not even talking about the tourists. So with new development, I know it sounds counterintuitive, but this is TRPA's, in line with TRPA's regional plan. With new development, we get BMPs, or best management practices. The BMPs decrease runoff into the lake. We could shift lodging into our town centers instead of heavily in our neighborhoods, and we could create more vibrancy and walkability. We're trying to reduce congestion and vehicle miles traveled, and really let workers live close to their jobs. Let the visitors come and park once and walk, and have everything they need right here. Restaurants, amenities, their lodging. And we'd like a steady customer base for businesses because it is difficult for them. And then I'll focus on what these amendments do not accomplish, because there has been a lot of communication on social media and in the community, and it does appear to me that there is a misunderstanding of some of the amendments. So I would like to try to clear that up a little bit. Like Crystal said, they do not increase density. Density is outlined in the area plan today as a certain amount of units per acre. We have not changed that in the area plan at all. It also, these amendments do not increase carrying capacity. TRPA has already allocated all of our development rights at set quantities for Placer County. So for example, if you want to build a mixed-use building that's hotel and commercial and housing, you have to go out and secure and purchase the commercial floor area by the number of feet. You have to purchase resource accommodation units for each lodging unit. You have to purchase a residential unit of use for each residential use. So all of this development has been commoditized by TRPA, and it's at set quantities. So no matter the form of a building, whether it's 4 stories or 2 stories, we still only have a certain amount as a county of commercial floor area, tourist accommodation units, and residential units to give out to development. That is capped. We also do not increase building heights for all buildings in town centers with these amendments. We will talk about some certain allowances for building height increases that are proposed, and those are just for mixed use buildings in the town centers, in the core areas that include 50 or more of tourist accommodation units or lodging units, like a hotel, and housing, and public art, and other design criteria. These amendments also do not conflict with TRPA scenic or environmental thresholds. In fact, I'm pretty sure that even with the proposed amendments, if they were to go through, some buildings may be allowed under our amendments, a certain height, a certain density, a certain number of commercial floor area, for example, and they may still conflict with TRPA scenic standards because TRPA scenic standards are very strict and that they are that way for a reason to protect the lake's fuchsia. So those are still in place. In fact, we are relying and coordinating very closely with those scenic standards, so they work together. I'll also talk about how amendments do not allow larger projects without future approvals. So anything that we are proposing to allow without a use permit has already been screened out from the vehicle miles traveled threshold screening criteria that TRPA has established. So anything we are proposing to allow without a use permit truly is a small scale infill development. It's like a mom and pop type of business that wants to come in, or a small boutique hotel under a certain number of units. We're trying to get the types of businesses, especially the small ones, that we'd like to see and have in our town centers, and make that easier for those to go forward. A large project, a large mixed-use project, a large hotel project, anything going to, trying to get to the proposed heights included in these amendments, all of those types of projects would still require use permits, and therefore would go through the public outreach and the California Environmental Quality Act and TRPA environmental review. So they would go through things like Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors, and then potentially TRPA hearing bodies as well. As part of that environmental review process, they would have to look at their emergency evacuation plans. They would have to look at the TRPA scenic standard thresholds. They would have to analyze the vehicle miles traveled that their project would trigger. So we're not allowing anything large by right. Those large types of projects would still have to go through all of these processes, even with these amendments. So I'm just going to talk about, I pulled out a few quotes from the TRPA regional plan just to really highlight how much the regional plan focuses on redevelopment of the town centers. It won't be done word for word, but redeveloping existing town centers is a high priority. To better address water quality issues, one of the primary goals of the 2012 regional plan update was to accelerate private investment in environmentally beneficial redevelopment activities. The regional plan really attempts to preserve the character of established residential areas outside of the town centers. It focuses on ensuring adequate capacity for redevelopment. And it talks about how town centers are targeted for redevelopment in order to create less auto-dependent development patterns. Areas where people can walk around and get everything they'd like to have on their vacation, and areas where the full-time residents can walk around and have a vibrant community and get their local services. Really to provide those economic opportunities in the region. And overall, to promote environmentally beneficial redevelopment and revitalization within the town centers. These are all quoted directly from the TRPA regional plan. This proposed amendment today also aligns with some of our other county plans and programs. It aligns with our Placer County Resort Triangle Transportation Plan, which focuses on mobility and allowing alternative modes of transportation. So people can walk, bike, take a shuttle, take the bus, etc. It also focuses on and aligns with our Placer County parking initiatives. We had a 2-year pilot parking exemption program for the town centers focusing on parking management that was adopted by the board in 2020. These amendments help memorialize that parking exemption program so that can continue. And it also aligns with the transportation demand management strategies for Fort Tahoe that was adopted in 2019, which also focused on mobility and bus and walkability and bikeability, and really how do we get everybody around without having to drive. So just as a background on the Tahoe Basin Area Plan, it was adopted by the board in 2016 and by TRPA in 2017. It encompasses the whole North Lake Tahoe area of Placer County. It is our zoning ordinance for the Tahoe Basin. It is the land use regulations and policies. And it identifies policy initiatives, capital improvements, and redevelopment to get that environmental redevelopment. It was last amended in 2020. It was a small update focused on mostly accessory dwelling units to bring the area into conformity with state law, which has changed recently on accessory dwelling units. And so now I will hand it over to Stacy and she'll walk you through the policy amendments that are proposed along with the proposed amendments for the implementing regulations. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
So I'm going to dive into the actual changes that we are recommending to the policy document as well as the implementing regulations. And so we looked at all of our policies that we have in our existing policy document, and we identified a few sections that we are proposing to add some new policies to. Beginning with scenic resources, we are recommending a new policy that TRK scenic evaluation to direct private investment to town centers. Also, with regard to vegetation, we're looking at encouraging more hardening and green waste and defensible space incentive and or rebate programs. Also, with socioeconomic, to introduce some new high-speed broadband infrastructure capacity, childcare facilities, and then also mechanisms to prevent ongoing blight. And this was one added policy that we heard as a result of our last November 30th NITRAC meeting. And so just trying to incorporate items that we've also heard from folks through the community. And then with regards to land use, we are proposing some policies to look at a reservation and conversion manual for our allocations and conversion of TRPA development rights, as well as funding resources for our frontage improvements, which primarily consist of sidewalks, curb, and gutters. Also, look at parking management plans and community-wide snow storage plans. And then with regards to policies relative to mixed use, we are encouraging mixed use in residential components in our business park and light industrial spaces, as we recognize that there was a lack of those mixed uses in those areas. And in our town centers, we are proposing some policies to encourage active ground floor uses, allow or increase the mobile vendor and food trucks in our town centers, retain and expand the businesses from the North Tahoe Tricky region area. Also relocate industrial and public utility land uses in our town centers to free those up for that redevelopment of private investors, as opposed to them occupying public utility or industrial type uses in our town centers. And then also, we looked at parking maximums and creative parking solutions for our town centers. And then local public art in North Tahoe is an important policy that we added for community design. With regards to the redevelopment policies, we are proposing a few policies relative to adaptive reuse or reuse of vacant, underutilized retail and office space. Also revitalize and create new high quality lodging. Really look at these public and private parking areas that we have and see if there's an opportunity for some mixed use or flexible gathering spaces of those. Expedite building permit processes, and also new business innovation space and flexible light industrial spaces. And with regards to housing, we always can use some new policies relative to housing, and so we are introducing some new policies relative to streamlining affordable, modern, and achievable housing, require that 50% of units converted from multifamily to condos be deed restricted to those affordable levels of the definition of TRPA. Monitor and track the housing data in our region. Also, look at an adaptive management of the short-term rental inventory to balance out that housing availability. So, for example, for each new lodging unit that comes into our town centers, we would look at decreasing the STR cap, so the short-term rental cap. Again, to balance out the impacts of the neighborhood and bring those lodging units into our town centers. Also allow local worker overnight camping in public and private parking lots, and also consider building local worker housing above those public and private parking lots. So now I'm gonna dive into the actual implementing regulations, and the implementing regulations are basically the development standards to help implement those policies that we are trying to fulfill. And so I'm going to go through the implementing regulations based on where they are located. So I'm going to start out with our town center amendments. And specifically what we're proposing in our town centers relative to our land use regulations. We did look at our land use tables, and we noticed that there's a lot of uses that are listed as uses we want to see in our town centers, but they either had a use permit required in order for that use to come in, or a zoning clearance. And so as Emily described, these are some of those barriers that folks don't want to have to come through that kind of use permit process, especially if they're a smaller type business. So for example, an eating and drinking place that would like to occupy an existing storefront in our town centers. We are introducing that if that use, so the eating and drinking place, were to be of a certain square footage to be screened out from the vehicle miles traveled. So in other words, we have this tool that actually TRPA has provided to us. It's called a PIA tool. And what you do is you can punch in your square footage of the size of your building and your location, and it can tell you where you will screen out from if your vehicle miles traveled of that use is going to cause a significant impact or exceed those thresholds that are identified for that area. And so we took that as an opportunity to use for our land use tables and recognize that some of these uses, if they can stay within those square footages, they should be an allowed use. And so we did, some of our amendments do look at some changes to uses as it relates to whether or not they are an allowed use or if they need a zoning clearance or use permit. But it's important to note with all of these changes to our land use tables that regardless of their size, if they're went from a minor use permit to an allowed use, there's still a design review component to it. And so that design review component is actually a public process that that owner or that tenant would have to go through. The design review committee consists, called the Tahoe Basin Design Review Committee, and it consists of 7 members that are appointed by our Board of Supervisors, and they make recommendations to staff on these projects that come in. So there's still an opportunity for the public to come voice their concerns, thoughts, opinions on these uses that may be allowed uses with these proposed amendments. We also added food trucks and mobile vendors as allowed uses. And then hearing from the community, we are proposing that new real estate and property management offices not be allowed on the ground floor frontage. They may be on the sides or on the rear or in the second story or third story, but it wasn't something that our community wants along our frontages of our town centers. So also with the land use table, hotels and motels and other transient dwelling units were considered and allowed by right if they're 20 units or less. And again, it has to meet the B&T thresholds required. And that also similarly to that, new single family development over 1 unit, only allowed if the single family use is 25% or less of the entire project. Or if at least 50% of the single family residential units are deed restricted to those affordable levels of TRP's definition. And also, we considered accessory dwelling units and identified that provided that they're associated with single family, that they too not be allowed on the ground floor of North Lake Boulevard frontage. Again, this is just trying to facilitate sort of more of that active use along our frontages of our town centers. And then across the board, primarily multifamily, multi-person, and employee housing allowed if 100% of the units are deed restricted to affordable levels. Again, this is trying to also tie in that housing piece that we so desperately need. So development standards in our town centers. These are the, guiding standards for someone to develop and for redevelop. And we added references to our streetscape and roadway design characteristics. We also acknowledge that our frontage improvement requirements are not consistent throughout the document. So we made that consistent for our readers to understand when and where and how frontage improvements would be required. We also are recommending that frontage improvements be required for single-family residential uses and rely on the land use development manual for the specifications. So, what size, what curb width and height of the curb. We can rely on the land use development manual. And then furthermore, shore zone requirements. The county recently updated our shore zone ordinance named Lake Tahoe Shore Zone. And so to ensure consistency with that, we've rolled that into these amendments as well. So with the building length, there's a few things we acknowledged during our review. So again, we're still in the town centers. This is only applicable to the town center areas. We noticed that there was not a maximum building length in our Tahoe City town center. So to be consistent with Kings Beach, we've added that into Tahoe Cities. We also looked at the compatibility with our residential zone districts, and we acknowledged that that there was no consideration really for the residential zone districts adjoining or directly across from these commercial zone districts. So we are recommending a maximum 70 feet on all parcel frontages of those parcels directly facing residential zone districts. We also are recommending a decrease in the building length from 350 feet to 250 feet in our mixed-use tourist zone district, which is at the state line Tahoe Inn area, not over by Calumet. And then further with refinements to our building length, we looked at that in sort of distinguishing it. So on the mountainside, a building length may be considered up to 500 feet in length for some town center mixed uses if all of the following are met. They comply obviously with the design standards and the scenic requirements of TRPA. There are separations of length that are incorporated. So this is really to break up the building length, but also at the same time, finding an opportunity to provide some of those outdoor spaces that are great in our town centers. Those can consist of outdoor eating and drinking areas, plazas or pedestrian paths or alleys. And that we also provide 15% deed restricted achievable housing and also provide public art. So, and then similarly on the lake side, we recognize that a building length up to 250 feet could be considered for mixed use projects, provided that at least 50% of the building comprises housing that is 100% deed restricted to affordable levels. So moving on to building height, and again, still in our town centers, we recognized in our current area plan that the height is identified in both feet and stories. And so to eliminate confusion and also to provide flexibility for the developer to really understand what the standard is, we're just keeping the building height to be measured in feet. We also are considering amendments to the town center areas in our core areas to allow for consideration of an additional 5 feet, so up to 61 feet in height, only, again, for our town center mixed use projects. They include all of the following. They're fronting 28, they have 50 or more hotel units, they have deed restricted affordable housing, public art, and then again, compliance with both the design and scenic standards. And then an additional 11 feet may be considered for these mixed-use buildings, meeting all of the criteria I mentioned, for only rooftop appurtenances. So these are just some examples of building heights in our region to kind of give you guys an idea. They range from all over, all different heights. So we have Kings Beach Housing at 48 feet, Olympic Valley at 70 feet. We have North Star at 75. We have the Hampton Inn in South Lake at 56, the Tahoe City Lodge proposed at 53, and then the Pepper Tree Inn in Tahoe City that exists at 70 feet with the little elevator shaft at approximately 81 feet. So
of course, we're continuing looking at these documents, and after the staff report had been submitted, for the planning commission, we learned of one minor mistake, and so we're asking, we are proposing an errata to the North Tahoe East Zone District, and this is just to reflect a consistency not only with Tahoe City, but also, with the minor change that we made to the side setback. So we are recommending that the rear setback modification be considered from a 20-foot setback to 0 feet, but 10 feet adjacent to those residential sub-districts. So again, acknowledging existing zone districts and the compatibility of these proposed structures. And then in our town centers, we do have specific design standards and guidelines. And so we learned that we don't have anything relative to groundwater as it relates for below-grade parking. And so in line with TRPA standards, of which you do allow groundwater for underground parking, we are recommending this amendment to our town centers section to allow for mixed-use projects to be considered for underground parking, which ultimately would reduce coverage. We also are proposing requiring mixed-use projects, multifamily projects, new single-family along state highways, and all non-residential be required to provide snow storage. So just a piece that was never really in our area plan. So now I'm going to move on to our housing amendments proposed. And in our residential zone districts, these are, again, the development standards for each residential zone district. And so we're eliminating the minimum lot area per dwelling unit. This is more to align with what the state is moving towards, but also just the modern zoning requirements that were more reliant on setbacks and coverage instead. We added a street side setback. This is again to align with the rest of the county that recently adopted that zoning text amendment to allow for that. And this is for basically corner lots where we receive a lot of variances for folks who want to try to build on a corner lot and they can't meet both front setbacks, which are either 20 feet from the front property line or 45 feet from the center line of the road. So we hope that this will alleviate some of those variances, and variances mean permit processing. So, and then also we are adding references to our roadway width requirements for the front setback. So again, this is more or less to notify the reader so that they can pick up this document and know what it would be required of them to be able to build or do an addition or something along those lines. And then also in our residential zone districts, to those that are applicable, we also are amending the code to reference that Lake Tahoe shore zone requirements that I mentioned earlier in our town centers. So in our residential districts, we have a special designation which is labeled as preferred, affordable, moderate, and achievable housing areas. And of those, just those zone districts, so the ones you see listed here, the proposed amendments to the development standards include matching the minimum lot size to the existing density maximums, reduce the minimum lot width to match the existing development pattern. So, really consider what existing conditions we have. Do our development standards coincide with what is actually physically out in the environment? And then this would also encourage the smaller scale development. Also, and that smaller scale development is considered as like duplexes or triplexes. Also we deleted the minimum lot area per dwelling unit, and rely again on the setbacks and coverage. So those are all guiding the development of these single family residential parcels. And again, I'd like to note that this is we are not proposing to increase any density with these proposals. Again, this is just to align with some of the state standards and also the existing conditions that exist today. And then also allow for 0-foot setbacks to accommodate duplexes. So if a property owner wanted to build a duplex, that shared property line could have a 0-foot setback, but we're recommending a 10-foot side setback on the opposite side. And then land use allowances, again, as I mentioned, really trying to get our multifamily, multi-person, employee housing, all of those desperate housing needs
anywhere in our Tahoe Basin. And so we have removed the use permit requirement of those uses if 100% of the units are deed restricted. So now I'm gonna move on to other zoning districts within our code, and specifically Lake Forest Commercial and our Tahoe City Industrial Subdistricts. Again, allowing any kind of housing, allowing mobile vendors, and we identified a maximum density for employee housing where it was not listed. Again, just to help guide the reader of what their maximum requirements are. And then Kings Beach Industrial, again, allowing single family, any kind of housing, provided that it's in a mixed use development and if 100% of the units are deed restricted. Also allow a mobile vendor and then reduce the minimum lot size to match the existing development and the minimum lot width to encourage that smaller scale, more affordable development. Moving on to our 64-acre tract, again, we recognize that no housing was allowed or considered within this area. It is there, we are just reducing the allowance that it would be an allowed use as opposed to a use permit process to go through. Similarly with Ramabacan, residential uses would be allowed if 100% of the units are deed restricted. And then in our Tahoma, Homewood, and Sunnyside West Shore mixed-use subdistricts, we are allowing mobile vendors. So again, those are the only changes in those zone districts. I just kind of tried to pull them out so you could see what the amendments are proposing. So now I'm going to move on to the area-wide standards and guidelines amendments. So these are standards that apply to the entire basin. So specifically like parking. We modified the parking requirements for residential uses. In our town centers, we looked at considering an amendment that for additions up to 1,000 square feet, no parking minimums would otherwise be required. And then also really put the stress on parking management programs. Trying to facilitate more flexibility, more shared parking, which could ultimately result in a reduction to parking. We also added the movable tiny house as a use that is allowed within our area plan. This aligns with the Placer County's recent board adoption of the tiny house ordinance that is applicable throughout the rest of the county, but it also aligns with South Lake Tahoe. They recently just adopted a movable tiny house ordinance as well. And then we're referring to the TRPA Code of Ordinances for signs. So for sign direction, we will just rely on their code. The idea behind this is to alleviate when TRPA makes changes to their code, we don't have to keep doing amendments to ours to keep up with theirs. And then of course, miscellaneous cleanup and typos and the like. So the project, these proposed amendments are subject to the requirements of Placer County, California Environmental Quality Act. Currently, we are considering statutory and categorical exemptions. However, we also need to go through TRPAs, and that is the specific initial environmental checklist, of which there are associated findings with that checklist that we will need to make for these amendments. So where to? Obviously, this slide will be modified slightly after the just the change of this item today being an information item. But you can see we've come a long way. We've had many outreach meetings but we are slated to go to the TRPA RPIC next Wednesday, so December 14th. And then we will come back to you guys at a future date. And then after that, we proceed with the Board of Supervisors, and then we leap into TRPA's RPIC, APC, and Governing Board. So we went to NITRAC 3 times. We went 2 times as information item, and then just most recently, November 30th, we received recommendation from them on these proposed amendments. And 6 of the 8 NITRAC members recommended or supported a recommendation of approval with the following considerations. They recommended that the height remain at 56 feet with the allowance of the additional height for appurtenances and rooftop amenities. They asked that more consideration be made to transitional zones between town center and adjoining residential zone districts. The review of fire evacuation and egress was brought up, and updates to the 2016 review While these amendments may not specifically need that type of level of update, it's important to note that any new project that comes in is required to, any large project, I should say, would be required to provide what we call an EPEP, Emergency Preparedness Evacuation Plan. And so, the review of fire evacuation and egress will continue to be evaluated as development comes into the basin. And then efforts to support redevelopment over new development. And sadly, there's not a lot of land that is available for just new development. So a lot of what we hope in our town centers is that redevelopment of taking existing structures and either tearing them down and rebuilding them or trying to utilize what they have. And then they also recommended consideration of a stakeholder working group relative to the development rates manual and requested community input and developing a program for that. So with that concludes our presentation, and we will be back. But I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, let's see. Is this on? Thank you, Stacy, Emily, Crystal. Appreciate your presentation. Do we have questions for staff at this point?
A question regarding the TRPA findings required. Are we going to be able to see those as this comes back? I would really think that would be helpful to this commission to see those TRPA findings.
We have findings that will go to the board, and we will be preparing the TRPA findings. We can certainly work with your commission and share that with you.
That'd be appreciated.
Just procedurally, this would go to the county's board first.
Right.
Approval prior to TRPA. So I guess there may be draft findings for the TRPA one, but those could get modified.
Understood. But it'd be nice to see the draft findings show the consistency with the TRPA regs. Another question, I heard about fire access, but what about hardening of the buildings, that people can occupy in place? And I know we had that project in Alpine Meadows that had hardened in place. And, it seems like especially for some of the concerns about evacuation routes and getting people on the road, hardening in place makes sense.
We have included a policy to support hardening and vegetation incentive programs in these proposed amendments. Additionally, I'll say that any new development will have to meet current building code, which will be substantially much more hardened than much of the development that we have on the ground today.
All right, thank you. That's it.
I would like to hear from John Hester from TRPA. So can you come and share with us?
First of all, I'd like to thank you all for having me here. I hope to provide a little bit of regional context, talk a little bit about our partnership with your staff. So for context, some of this is redundant, I'm sorry, but a lot of people don't know all these things. TRPA was created and does three main things. One is the requirements of the bi-state compact, where the two states gave some power to this agency that sits across the state line. That was approved by Congress and the President. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the bi-state things we do that relate to this in a second. We're also the Metropolitan Planning Organization, which means we're responsible for the Regional Transportation Plan and the Sustainable Community Strategy. Day to day, what does that mean? We're looking at VMT and trips and things like that to make sure the transportation system works. We're also under Section 208 of the Clean Water Act, Water Quality Management Planning Agency, which again, examines practically where we work with the Vermont Regional Water Quality Board and the Division of Environmental Protection to work on water quality for the lake. The total maximum daily load, which I'm sure you've heard about, you have part of that is for the whole basin is your responsibility in Placer County. You probably know there's laws that say there can be no sanitary sewer waste going into the lake. So what we all focus on really is the non-point source pollution, which is why we do coverage and BPs. I'm trying to relate all that down to the day-to-day. For the bi-state, what that really called for is threshold standards and then a regional plan and code to attain those. So also part of the compact was no new land subdivision. So what does that mean practically? And a lot of people don't see this, but you all know working in other parts of the county that when you have land subdivided, you get a lot of infrastructure like stormwater systems that deal with water quality. We don't have that because we haven't had land subdivision since the 80s. So that's why we have some of the other things like coverage. We do have, the only kind of subdivision we allow now is if you subdivide a multifamily building into condos, and that's really just for ownership change. We'll talk a little bit in a minute about growth, management, and development rights. We have other standards. Your staff mentioned some like scenic standards. And we also have in the regional plan, which we put in there in 2012, is this concept of creating area plans that are consistent, like your basin area plan, consistent with the regional plan. Once that's done, then we can sign an MOU, memorandum of understanding with your local government, and that gives them the authority to issue permits on our behalf. So not only your regulations, but ours. So that's kind of an overview. Let me talk a little bit about our growth management and development rights. We don't have a mandate to limit population or employment or that's not in our thresholds, but I'll just give you a little context. In 2000, the regional population was 62,843. Today it's 55,687, so it's down 7,000. Employment in 2000 was 27,200. Now it's 24,000, down 3,000. Our average annual daily trips, we look at Caltrans and NDOT data, North Shore over in Incline Village, down 10 to 70% from 2018. And from Caltrans, down 29%, not those Highway, and 28 from NDOT. VMT in the region from 2016 to 2020, region-wide, down 7%. Development rights, which we do regulate, we have a cap on residential units, we have a cap on commercial square footage, and a cap on tourist units or hotel rooms. Residential units since 2012, when there were 47,000 existing in the basin, have gone up by 943 basin-wide in 10 years. There's about 4,500 left, so that caps out at 51,000 change. That's all the residential development you can have with one caveat I'll talk about in a minute. Commercial square footage, existing in 2012, 6.4 million. It's gone down 50,000, remaining 731, so a total of 7 million plus a little bit commercial square footage. And then hotel rooms, 11,900 in 2012. Has gone down 685, and then you have the remaining 1,340 capacity, so that's 12,000 and some change. So you can kind of see it's not like any place else in terms of what growth is allowed and what development rights there are. One caveat I wanted to talk about was one of the mitigation measures that was in the environmental impact statement for the 2012 original plan was that we look at our development rights system and not increase the amount, but figure out how we can move them between categories, because there may be less of a demand for commercial square footage, for online retail or whatever, and more of a demand for housing, as long as that cap is kept the same. So we did do that. So there are conversion ratios based on vehicle on trip behavior. The other two things that we do that limit, that manage growth and limit development is we have what we call coverage. I mentioned that we don't have stormwater systems by and large, so we limit the amount of the parcel that can be covered. And so the maximum amount of coverage with some exceptions is 30%, and it gets less and less depending on how sensitive the land is. So when your staff talked about the regional plan tries to move development off of sensitive lands to less sensitive lands. That's to meet that coverage requirement, which is really about runoff, stopping runoff into the lake. We also, not only do we have these little amounts of development left, we have an allocation system so that only so much every 2 years is allocated. So there's a governor on the pace. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, a lot of complicated stuff that TRPA has worked a long time to do. But what I want to talk about just a little bit more, and then I'll be happy to answer questions, is this regional plan, area plan relationship. So what we worked on, we looked at several models, but the idea is that if the local government can do wants to do an area plan and can do an area plan with public input, more detailed standards and so forth, but that fits within the regional sideboards, if you will, we're happy to find that consistent, that it does fit in those sideboards and get it closer to the people, the standards, a lot of the things Stacy just talked about. Once that's done, as I mentioned, we can do a memorandum of understanding and then delegate permitting authority to the local government, Placer County. In doing that, Placer County then defines which types of development your staff will take care of and which types will stay with TRPA. And part of that is that we do an annual audit, which is tied to those allocations I just mentioned. And that annual audit looks at, did they permit consistent with the regulations that we ultimately approve, that your board of supervisors and you all approve. And so we do that every year. We do that in a report called the Local Government Coordination Report. It happens to be going to our board next week. We also, look at how well your local government is doing getting the credits they need from, in this case, the Water Quality Board for TDL, for dealing with total maximum daily load in certain catchments. And that's in the report too. So if those two things, those two things are addressed adequately, we recommend recertification of the MOU and continuing the partnership in terms of permitting. What I'd like to do is just read you the last couple sentences of the Placer County part on permitting here, just so you know. What we are reporting to our board next week is Placer County does an excellent job of coordinating with TRPA on the permitting projects. As a result, TRPA staff recommends, pursuant to TRPA Code 13.8.4, entitled that the governing board recertify Placer's MOU. There's also information in here on total maximum daily load, credit compliance, and I will leave this with the clerk when I get through. But what I'd like to say kind of in summary is that Placer County's worked with TRPA, and we think in a very productive partnership. And we're, like your staff said, we've been involved in looking at these amendments and whether they're consistent or not, and all of the other aspects that I talked about. We view them as partners, view you as a partner in implementing the regional plan at the local level through the area plans and what you've done. We're happy to answer any questions, but just wanted you to know that, how we feel about the partnership and give you some regional context.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, questions for John?
No.
Okay. Okay, thank you. We'll let you know if we have some.
Okay, thank you.
I think I'd like to go ahead and open up public comment.
Could we take a break?
Yeah, you want one now?
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna do a 5-minute break. And just to remind you, if you haven't signed up to provide public comment, we have a sheet over here to sign up, just to give us a sense of how many are wishing to speak. So we're gonna take a 5-minute break and we'll resume again. Okay, welcome back everyone. We're gonna get started with public comment. Thank you for your patience. It looks like, come on in and get a seat. It looks like we have 35 people that want to give public comment, and we'll make sure everyone gets a chance to do so. Just so you know, you'll have 3 minutes. And if someone says something you agree with, you can reference that. Maybe you don't need to repeat the whole thing, so we'll call you up in order. We're gonna start with the people here in person, and then we'll go to the online people. So we have a list over here. If you are not on the list, that's okay. We'll give you a chance. After we go through the list, we'll ask if people wanna still share. So we'll start with the list. And we're gonna call 3 people at a time. If you hear your name, if you can stand behind the person speaking so you can queue up, we'll call 3 up at a time. Okay, we're ready for public comment.
Okay, if I could get Steve Wallace, Karen Leaf, and Jan Ellis.
I wanted to be able to say ditto. Yeah, thank you. I guess I came because I was very concerned.
Sorry, can you say your name?
Jan Ellis. I've come to a few meetings over the years. I've been at Tahoe, been in Shore for, seems like forever. And I have concerns like many local residents do of how these the major ones, I love the thought of these small ones. And I see the idealism in the plan, I really do. My concern is to see these mega big developments going on that involve needing a work crew to build them, that need people to run them when they're finally completed, and where the housing is going to be. The affordable housing for the workforce is a huge concern. And also the traffic. I just have a hard time with the gridlock that we especially face in the summer times, and the fear of fire that we now live with, and how these things come together with a 2-lane road, which is all we have to work with for the future. So I just really am concerned about that and hope it.
We cannot. I want to ask that you not pause between each one for time. And were the other 2 people not here?
Yeah, Steve Wallace or Karen Leaf? Their chairs. Their
Karen's
judges. Okay, we'll come back to that. If I could get Liz Pennyman, Megan Lemmy. You're up, Karen. I'm just kidding you. Thank you. All I have to say is I don't really support this construction of the big project going on in Kings Beach. For many reasons, but I like to see the development. Thank you.
What was your name?
Karen Lee.
Karen, okay.
Good morning. My name is Megan Schleby, XCHI-LLBMI. I'm the senior member of the North Tahoe Regional Advisory Council. I've been a member since 2009. I'm the TPAP's cheerleader. A copy of it is in front of me at every one of our meetings. Now, today I'm speaking as Kings Beach resident for almost 20 decades. Or 2 decades. Almost 40 community members work on the TVAP for 2.5 years, including my husband. And the mission of the original 2017 area plan was for protecting the lake.
Apologies, but can we start the time? Go ahead.
And supporting redevelopment while preserving the unique character of our town and village centers. And my detailed concerns, recommendations are highlighted in my 2 letters that I sent to you earlier this week. Now, the 2 main concerns I see are height and also balanced mixed use in our towns and our village centers. First, height. The Big 10 project, which is right next here to the event center, is 34 feet 1 inch tall. The original area plan team recommended that on the lake side of the town centers, height should not exceed 36 feet and should be angled to preserve view sheds. Now, if you take a drive down to the end of town, the Domus project, which is the affordable, achievable housing at the end of town, is 48 feet. This should be reserved for our mountainside. Secondly, single-family dwellings on the lakeside. Developers can make the most money by putting up condos and townhouses, and we've already seen residential projects presented in the last years. We have 22 retail structures on the lakeside here in the Kings Beach Town Center. We must ensure that we can protect our retail on the lakeside. Finally, when I'm not reading the area plan, I've been reading Stephen King's newest novel, Fairy Tales. There was a new word that I've never seen before in the novel. It's called paywall. You have to pay a subscription, or in our case, is to see the lake. Don't paywall our town and village centers for the privileged few, but for all those who come to admire Lake Tahoe. Finally, this is a mountain community. We're not urban, we're rural. It's 78% public land managed by the Forest Service in the basin. We're not Roseville, we're not Auburn, we're not a urban area. We have 2-lane, winding, very busy, and sometimes hazardous mountain roads, and we need your help to preserve it. Thank you.
I'm Liz Cannon. I live in Kings Beach. There's a project in Truckee called the Rail Yard. And with every intention and 10 years of trying to do the right thing, it still turned into prefab blocks, which are okay in places like North Reno, but it's just really not working for Truckee. The affordable housing there didn't have the Nevada County program, so they had to go down to the valley to get some people who needed housing and shipped them up to Truckee. And it's a strange situation. I think, even though they tried really hard to make it right, the problem was it was big. And so they had to do everything all at once without an organic process. Now, our small towns have such quality that piece by piece, it can continue to be useful and charming. As far as blight in Kings Beach, I think the county owns a lot of blighted buildings. And I have a feeling they're saving them so they can do one big thing. Anyway, transportation, I love buses and trains. I spend a lot of time on them. And if the bus comes every 15 minutes, I will use it, even though it's not cost effective. Mobile vendors, I hate to see our restaurants suffer any more than they do from trying to stay open year round. There's 3 restaurants here that stay open year round that I go to. And if there's a mobile vendor, I don't know how they do. Best of all, what's missing here is the young people. And that's okay, they have other things to do, but I think if their public education included just even a week or 2 of architecture and planning required, we would work together in a more sophisticated way. Because right now, things changing so much quickly in the world with climate change and everything. The young people, I think, would have amazing things to offer to this group. That's it, thanks.
Thank you.
Steve Wallace? No? Okay. If I could get Ellie Waller and Nichols and Debbie Langston?
Thank you for being here today. It's always nice to have controversial issues heard here on site. I'm glad the weather was favorable. Ellie Waller. I hope that Placer County staff and planning commissioners thoroughly read the detailed comments from Mountain Area Preservation, the League, Sierra Clean Air, Friends of West Shore, North Tahoe Preservation, and the many concerned citizens that have attended at least one of the meetings for the NETRAC. I ask that you also listen to the long-time land use planners, small business developers here, the community members. I believe that the development community has had ample time to input to this 2-year process. We're playing catch up. I do ask you today to recommend that staff conduct a couple interactive question and answer public meetings to replace and refine the amendments proposed. When you revisit the updated community enhanced proposal with the adequate environmental analysis and mitigation plans, then it will be time for your review. You hear staff say time and again that there are no new hotels in over 50 years. Well, staff continues to approve the luxury condo portion of these large projects instead of conditioning the project to build the hotel components in phase 1. Same can be said for some of the workforce housing or the in-lieu fees that aren't gonna build it. Build this stuff first. This should be a priority. Financial feasibility, it's a conundrum. Building supply costs and availability, interest rates, these things cannot be controlled. TRPA restrictive scenic ordinances should remain the same. There's no excuse if you can't build it, perhaps reduce the size of the project. Bigger isn't always better. Lake Tahoe isn't just for the wealthy. It's a national treasure to be shared by all. Last question is, do we really want to look like South Shore and the villages of Placer County in Palisades and North Star? We have our own charm and it should remain that way. Thank you.
I'm Gabby Langston, and I just have a couple of things. I think it's kind of risky business when you make decisions after, an unprecedented time that we had, like the COVID. It's a national issue. You're making decisions based on studies and things that have been going on during the COVID time, meaning motels closed down, rooms shut down, tourism, everything has changed. So I think that's one area that should be considered. The other thing is, after listening to the presentation this morning or earlier, was it seems like a lot of the concerns is staff identifying issues and details that would make things easier for people and developers coming in to understand maybe what concessions could be made. And it seems like some sort of specifications or handouts to potential investors, developers, where even though these are our guidelines that we've had in place for many years, these are now things that we would consider site-specific instead of just changing the criteria for any development. That's it.
Diane Nichols, North Tahoe Preservation Alliance. I'm getting really old now, but I'm still here. I'm still watching. And, we brought out the big guns. Mr. Hester showed up from TRPA, which is good because is this stuff all in sync? Apparently it is. TRPA is on board with everything the county's doing. which would have been nice to know in advance. It seems like the lead agency is in Placer County or TRK. So hopefully we're gonna get this all straight. But I just brought a couple of fun pictures for you because the staff has not given us, okay, this is 70 feet versus 48. Feet versus 48 feet. And it's, you know, the pepper tree in top of the city is 70 feet. So there's no extra density thing, just defies logic. Because if you reduce parking and you increase the number of units on, say, single family, they're really triplexes now. You get a single family, you get an accessory dwelling and a junior dwelling. So that's, and then you don't need parking. So then you get to build bigger, which is more bedrooms, which is more people. If you do underground parking, then you get to build over the underground parking with more units. You don't have to have parking as an additional coverage limit. So to say that coverage reduces or caps density is just, it's misleading. And I hate to say that, but anyway, we really need the cap, you know, you can trade CFA for TAUs, TAUs for CFA. You can have bonus units if you reduce coverage in SECs. You can, 300 square feet of CFA can be a TAU, and a TAU can be any size. When it starts out as a hotel room or a motel room, it's 8 by 10, 80 square feet. Now it's, as in Boulder Bay, 5,000 square foot penthouses, because TRP never made a maximum. If there's more, if things are thousands of square feet, there's more bedrooms, there's more people. So to say that density is going to increase, it just makes us not trust what you're telling us. And I know you have the best intentions, but by hanging on to that, it's very upsetting. Okay, so there's 14 projects. Tahoe Inn, it was supposed to, the units would go to Homewood, 110 units, and it was supposed to be an open space. Now they're going to redo it with 110 units. They're double dipping, that's more density. Same thing with Boulder Bay. They took a Colony Inn hotel down in South Shore, took those units and made where it was 114 units in Crystal Bay. Then it became 350. So you see that's an increase in density. And then they took the Colony Inn site, tore the motel down, and now they're redeveloping it. It's double dipping, it's more, TRPA has gotta do an accounting of this that makes, they have to keep track of all this stuff. They've made it so complicated, and complicated systems fail. This is failing us. We have a 2-lane road, we have 14 projects. I talked to a friend who is a big developer on the West Coast. He said, I am getting things across my desk every day from North Shore. The floodgates have opened.
Next, if we could have Crystal Sawyer White, Chris Hennessy, and Sophia Hydrick.
Good morning.
Morning.
Placer County Plan. I am Crystal Sawyer White, Housing Program Manager at Tahoe Prosperity Center. I would like to begin by thanking you and your county staff for your effort remaining focused on the housing issue in the Lake Tahoe Basin. I am here to convey the Tahoe Prosperity Center support for the Tahoe Basin Area Plan amendments being presented today. We strongly support incentives to encourage more workforce housing and less cumbersome approval process for small business startups that is more simplified. The Tahoe Basin Area Plan and the Tahoe Prosperity Center Envision Tahoe Prosperity Playbook are both addressing relevant issues for community and economic development. We have recognized that redeveloping in town centers, adding workforce housing, and encouraging smaller homes and multifamily houses are critical to our local workforce and community improvement. We support the current proposed changes and especially the additional policies that have been included to support seemingly affordable, moderate, and achievable housing and address the job housing imbalance in the region. In addition, we support adaptive management of the short-term rental inventory to balance housing availability with short-term rentals as new lodging products are added to the region. We would encourage more availability of missing middle homes. I hope you keep encouraging innovative programs like the Workforce Housing Preservation Program. Specifically, the Tahoe Prosperity Center feels that the following changes are still needed to encourage more local housing development that benefits the community. 1, add significant coverage, height, and density incentives if the housing is deemed restricted to local workers. Do not place AMI restrictions or add additional barriers on any workforce housing projects. Continue to reduce parking for all housing-related projects in town centers. Allow more flexibility in types of projects. We appreciate the changes included to allow for tiny homes, as you said earlier. But modular technology and creativity for pre-owned ADUs can go a long way towards additional options for local workers. Workforce housing preservation is crucial as we continue to bring awareness in the Lake Tahoe community. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Hi, my name is Chris Hennessy. Good afternoon. I am not here to speak in opposition of redevelopment, but rather the scale of the proposed changes of the plan. I'm requesting a happy medium, so to speak, as there seems to be lots of room for compromise, starting with accountability on existing blighted properties, hotel at State Line, boarded up buildings on 28, etc., properties that Placer County approved and are involved in. Showing accountability would maybe gather support from the community for the proposed changes. Camping and overnight housing is already happening. We have a Placer County public parking lot across the street from my home, and my neighbors and I are in constant communication with Placer County Sheriff, as well as cleaning up needles, makeshift fire pits, pieces, beer bottles, trash, and things of that nature. At any rate, increasing density and reducing parking would be unfavorable for Kings Beach. Our town already serves as a parking lot for the state beach in the summer. To increase the wall mass to 500 feet, which is longer than the city block, would be outrageous. Currently, the widest building in our town is Kings Beach at a little over the Kings Beach Safeway at a little over 200 feet. Because of these concerns such as wildfires, traffic congestion, pedestrian safety, and not to mention environmental concerns, which yes, I know developers have to address, but tourists don't. The proposed changes in the future, I'm glad that you are going to revisit this, should not be approved as presented. That is my request. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, planning commissioners and staff, and the public. Really great to see such an amazing turnout here today. My name is Sophia Heydrich. I'm the Advocacy Director with Brown Area Preservation. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. We did submit some written comments, but I wanted to follow up on a few key points here. First, we largely support the recommendations that were put forth by the NITRAC at the November 30th meeting, save the increase in height for appurtenances. We would encourage you to follow those recommendations, even if that means providing additional time so that decision makers and the public can really understand the full implications associated with these proposed amendments. It would be incredibly helpful to have renderings, illustrations come up with a couple times, just so that people could really understand what these projects could actually look like on the ground. Staff has also stated that there are a variety of projects that have come forth in the past that were stalled but could have moved forward had these amendments been in place. What are those projects? Help us understand what we as a community might be missing out on. From the perspective of the general public, this does feel fast-tracked, especially given how much time, effort, and thoughtful discussion went into the adoption of the Tahoe Basin Area Plan. That being said, I do appreciate that this is an informational item only today. I think that that's a great first step, and I really appreciate you listening to the public on that. We do understand why these amendments are coming forth today, and we do agree that workforce housing and redevelopment are critical for North Lake Tahoe. Streamlining the development process, removing barriers, that might make sense in certain circumstances, but it cannot come at the expense of the environment or our unique mountain character, our job is to be stewards of the national treasure that is Lake Tahoe. Our biggest concerns are related to height, density, mass, and scale. Some of those changes, again, might be appropriate in specific locations on a case-by-case basis, not just for really large projects. But context is key. Mitigation has to be in place. So we are against the proposal to increase height, allowing for 71-foot tall structures, including appurtenances. That does change the scenic quality of North Lake Tahoe. In alignment with the NITRAC map does support and encourage you to consider utilizing transition zones where the length, density, and setbacks transition from the most massing right in town centers and then kind of scales down as you get closer to those mixed use and residential areas. Another key point for us is workforce housing. We do not believe that the incentives proposed will actually facilitate the construction of projects that this community wants and needs. Primarily because the development community has a tough time getting financial backing with these deed restrictions. To pencil out, they will have to use tax credits and subsidies. So these amendments primarily focus on removing barriers across the board in town centers, which means we'll end up with more of the most economically viable projects, luxury condos, again, not what the community wants and needs workforce housing. Finally, an environmental review is needed as part of this process. Baseline conditions have changed. And given cumulative impacts for the village of Palisades, I think it's incredibly timely to be looking at cumulative impacts. Thank you for your time, I appreciate it.
Okay, next if I could get Jessica Roberts, John Radable, and Jim Gardner.
Hello, I'm Jessica Roberts, longtime local. I grew up in Oklahoma and now reside here in Kings Beach. And I just want to come and address my concerns as a local and someone who occasionally does have to commute to Reno and to South Lake Tahoe. And the additional traffic these proposed plans will bring to the area when we already see so much trash everywhere. So much congestion. We have a 2-lane road, and also like my generation, I'm in my early 40s. There's not a lot of us that can even survive in this area. So I want to continue to, put forth how important it is for our locals to be able to live here year round. Also, people that grew up in the area, and be more than just a place for someone to come and enjoy their second home, which is great. I love that as well. But what about our people that want to live here year round, work in our local businesses, or those people to be serviced when they come here? Thank you.
My name's John Ratherbold, and I want to thank the commission for coming up here today. It's great, and thank county staff for all the work you guys have been doing. So, I'm a year-round local and member of the North Tahoe Business Association. I'm on the Mountain Housing Council, and we are what my wife and I are what people want. We provide workforce housing. So we have 2 multi-unit buildings, apartment buildings in town, less than a 3-minute walk from here, and we are actually ready, willing, and able to develop more workforce housing, go up, and what is some of the sticking points for us is parking, really. And I don't think anyone's brought it up today, but AB 2097, housing for people, not cars, that passed the legislature, signed by the governor. And I'm not sure to what degree it's been implemented, but we would like to not have to pay so much work. So I'll try to be brief. Anecdotally, so we provide housing, we have small units, and I have told people we can't have 2 cars per unit because they're mostly studios and 1-bedrooms. So that's the only people I can rent to, is that have 1 car. So so we rent to people, and then they have 2 cars, so they sell it or move it somewhere. And after a period of time, people tell me, John, I'm glad you made me get rid of that car because we take the bus. We share, my wife and I share a car, and we just don't need 2 cars. We're 3 blocks from here and 1 block from the bus stop. literally in 1 minute walk. Right here, almost anywhere in town is a 2 to 3 minute walk to the bus stop, which is free. So that's why we don't need lobby parking, so that's my big thing. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Good morning, Jim Gardner. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. 35-year resident of Kings Beach. I've been here a long time. We've seen a lot of changes. A lot of good ones, some, no changes. I came here to talk about parking and trash, originally, and, the parking's a mess. There's no enforcement, the trash, overflowing dumpsters, unkept dumpsters, no compliance. So what we need first is accountability before we move forward. We need somebody to take care of the laws we have now, enforce them, and, do that job. Something that, I saw in the presentation, you're gonna make RV parks in the parking lots. I don't know what people think that live across the street from these parking lots are gonna have all these good residences and whatever happens there, as Chris was mentioning earlier. The food vendors, I'd like to get more information, where they're gonna park. I know in the summer, it is a big mess here, there is no parking, people in the street all over the place. I've experienced over the summer, you have food trucks or food people, food carts on the corner, people park in the middle street, they get out of the car, they go to the food truck, people can't even drive by without somebody maybe getting hurt. So I think a lot of questions about food vending and RV parks should be addressed, or we need more information about that before you go forward. Mr. Hester brought up how all these vehicle mile trips and are reducing and everything. I don't know what month, I guess it's a whole year, but you should come in the summer, in June, July, August, because there's no shortage of, vehicle mile trips, and it's, it's mayhem. So I hope you consider giving us more information before you move forward. Thank you for your time.
Okay, up next, I could get Bert Sandman, Kevin McDermott, and Katie Biggers.
Good morning. My name is Bert Sandman. I'm the president of the Rockaway Point Homeowners Association. And I want to acknowledge that we've worked incredibly well together in the creation of the Speedboat Beach Master Plan. When we implemented in 2016. Curiously, when I was a child, nobody knew there was a Speedboat Beach, and now it's an international destination. And it's not without its problems. We have major trash issues and those sorts of things, but I just wanted to note that we have about all support the work of Ann Nichols and the North Toe Preservation Alliance. Thank you for your time.
Hi, my name is Kevin McDermott, and I live on Brook. I have Tahoe Valuation Services, a real estate appraisal firm. Been here since 1992, so I'm almost a local. And, one thing I almost find really insulting to the intelligence of the people of Kings Beach is this thing about the density levels not increasing. I'm gonna be a stone's throw away from a potential building that'll be 72 feet tall, according to what I've heard today, 500 feet long. Well, guess what's gonna happen? I'm not gonna have any winter sun whatsoever. But you know what the town will have? An ice skating rink. Everything north of that, up for 3 blocks at least till Trout, will be nothing but an ice skating rink. Telling us that is really insulting to our intelligence. One other thing I'd like to make is when it comes to Placer County and the TRPA working together, I have a question for you. How come Placer County requires an IPE score, individual assessor parcel survey score of 726, while all the other counties and areas require an IPE score of 0? A decade ago, I was told, well, that was because Placer County hasn't done its fair share of infrastructure work. I've seen them do an awful lot of infrastructure work since then, yet I haven't seen those IPE scores change. Anyway, thank you very much. Bye.
Hi, Planning Commission, thank you for being here today, and thank you to staff for all of your hard work that you guys have put in. Since you came and first presented this to the Tahoe City Downtown Association in October, you guys have done a ton of work. I'm the executive director of the Tahoe City Downtown Association. I've lived in Tahoe for almost 5 years. Many of the proposed amendments and items that the TCA and our TCA Business Advocacy Group have been advocating for since the inception of the TCA in 2004 are present in a lot of these amendments. So we are in support of a lot of them. One of the primary goals of these amendments is to remove the barriers for small businesses and streamline the development process in the area. Our board, and more specifically our Business Advocacy Group, actively works to seek solutions and support projects to build economic vitality in Tahoe. So mainly attracting new businesses and development while helping existing businesses thrive. And then in addition, just housing as well. So just wanted to share those comments. Thank you.
Could you state your name for the record, please?
Oh, sorry. Katie Biggers. Sorry.
Okay, up next, if I can have Tony Karowski, Laura Miller, and Jackson Rio.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thanks for joining us today in North Lake Tahoe. We appreciate having you up here to hear our community feedback about the TDAP amendments. First, I'd like to point out a huge thank you to Placer County staff this morning for really illustrating how the TDAP amendments will correlate to produce extra workforce housing in our region from two perspectives. One, the development piece, the actual regulations themselves, and then two, relocating visitation from our neighborhoods and short-term rentals back to lodging facilities back to our centers in core town areas. This is a huge importance to us. Not only is it going to be an economic vitality tool, it will encourage visitors to come and stay and be within walking distance of restaurants, retail outlets, and our cores, but also our transit system, which is growing by leaps and bounds over the last few years here in North Lake Tahoe, if you haven't noticed. Previously, I was sat on the board of the Tahoe Truckee Transportation Management Association from 2016 to 2021. And in that time, we grew that system from taking on projects like completing year-round service on Highway 267 to supporting large-scale events like our 4th of July celebrations with park and ride opportunities, bringing people into our downtown core areas, as well as most recently our micro-transit system, Tire Connect, goes out into our neighborhoods and as our first last mile connection piece from our mainline operations out into our neighborhoods. The point here I want to make is that the amendments that you're looking at and taking into consideration today aren't in a silo. This isn't a piece of work that's sitting out there by itself, thought in a think tank of just a few people. This is a community effort that is taking many, many different levers to pull to affect things like workforce housing in our region. The TMA and our work there, that's an example of just one of the organizations and one of the group of community members here who are putting resources in place that are in parallel with the work that's being done here by county staff to affect a large-scale amount of change here in our region. Thank you for coming down here today. I would just offer that our membership of the North Lake Tahoe Resort Association is rather large now. It's taken on a new number, and as I am out there in the field talking with our businesses in the region, there's one resounding complexity to maintaining a viable business here in North Lake Tahoe. That's the ability to attract and retain workforce. It is our number one biggest issue in North Lake Tahoe, and we must address it. And these amendments, alongside with all of the other levers we're pulling, help us do that. Thanks for being here today.
Can I get your name?
Oh, I'm sorry.
My name is Tony Kowalski.
Thank you.
Hi, good day. My name is Laura Miller. I'm a full-time resident on the West Shore in Homewood. I apologize. I'm sort of scattered and not as prepared as other folks in my comments. I did attend the November 9th, I believe it was called a Municipal Advisory Council meeting. What I heard in the public comment from that meeting, everyone came up and said their great concern is housing. I think Placer County did a disservice to our community with the institution of the short-term rental ordinance, I believe of either 2019 or 2020. We have a commercial business essentially next to our home with a short-term rental. And my husband is a steel fabricator, and I have to think that our neighbors would hate it if he started operating his welder and grinder in our garage in our neighborhood. So I think that we kind of blew it by doing the short-term rental thing because it took away the housing for our locals that are our workforce. And it seems like this proposal says they want new workforce housing. Well, they had it, but it was given away with this great moneymaker for the homeowner as well as the county, I have to think. So then at the November 30th meeting, there were a lot of concerns about the height. And then this whole discussion and what is an appurtenance came up, and that was just completely embarrassing to listen to because it was introduced without really any background or understanding of what it was. I'm still a little confused because the language at that time was presented as temporary. And then today it was talked about as rooftop amenities. So I'm imagining like a kitchen, an outdoor kitchen on the top of a roof. And I don't see that as temporary. And it's saying I have to sum up, so I apologize. I think that John Hester, the gentleman from TRPA, said it really well. He said, let me find the quote, he was talking about Lake Tahoe. And he said it's not like any place else. It's not like any place else. And I don't think we should have a survey done by a group down in San Jose. I think that the survey should be done by our community. And final quote, Joni Mitchell, you paved paradise, you put up a parking lot. Thank you, folks.
Morning, planning commissioners, county staff, members of the public. My name is Jackson Riello. My name is Jackson Riello. I'm here as a land use planner. I work for a small land use planning firm based up south Lake Tahoe. We work on projects all around the entire Tahoe Basin, many of which take place in Placer County. I'd like to start by saying that I've attended and have been following every one of these public hearings pertaining to these code amendments. And I'd like to thank county staff for adjusting your presentation to present the information in a way that is more understandable to the public in response to public concerns each time. I want to kind of highlight a couple of issues. I'm speaking in support of this TDOT code amendment package from the perspective of a land use planner. The first thing is housing. I know that everyone here is, I think, pretty much on the same page here. Housing is hands down our biggest crisis that's going on in the Tahoe Basin right now. We've all heard the stories of dishwashers getting paid $35 an hour because restaurants can't retain dishwashers otherwise. It can be, this is a broad issue that is affecting every community around the Tahoe Basin. Pertaining to housing, I'd like to also bring up Mr. Hester's context in regards to kind of TRPA relationship to this. So as we heard, there's been no new lodging. There's actually been a decrease in lodging. We've also, as a land use planner working on projects around the basin, there have been almost no new updates of lodging. So the existing lodging that is there is all outdated. No one wants to use it. Or there's a dichotomy between either really dilapidated motels or really luxury resorts. That is causing people who come here to visit to stay in neighborhoods in short-term rentals. Also from the development side, I'd also like to kind of echo the sentiment that affordable housing doesn't happen on its own. Developers can't make projects pencil right now without either federal or state tax credits. These amendments are proposed to allow these types of projects to pencil with deed restricted housing. That is the purpose of these amendments, and I'm in support of incentives that do that. The other reason that I'd like to support this code amendment package is because of the environmental and economic environmentally and economically beneficial redevelopment as a whole. As we've heard, we all know we live here for the lake. The lake is absolutely gorgeous. It's a national wonder of the world, the surrounding mountain environment. Redevelopment processes improve our environmental quality of the entire lake, of the entire basin. Additionally, obviously, I would love to see more economic vitality in our community. And then the last thing I'd like to say, just to wrap up with my time, is that every concern that we've heard from the public, there are existing safeguards in place to ensure that misallocated or inappropriate buildings at specific project sites cannot take place. That's all I'd like to say. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, up next, if we could get Rob Olson, Scott Teachy, thank you, and Sue Daniels. And please be sure to state your name for the record.
As you stated, Rob Olson is my first. I'm a local and business owner in Tahoe City. I'm president of the Downtown Association. I'd like to echo what Katie Vickers said on that. As a personal, person, I'm a resident of Alpine Meadows of over 16 years. I'm an architect, a contractor, and real estate broker. I'm in favor of the amendments. I do feel on the opposite side, the majority of the public, that we can push it even more to favor more smaller developers such as myself or other people that are in the community. Because I think we need to do much more. People are going to come to Tahoe regardless. They're going to be here, they're going to stay here, they're going to work here. But we need to push them out of neighborhoods and communities and into areas of density. And I feel that this does help get that started and makes it possible. There are safeguards to look at shadowing and other things for projects to have smart development. And I would say that we should move forward with this, but I also feel like we need to push it harder to try to have smart development in our special areas and to get TAUs out of residential communities and put them into more dense areas where we can manage those people better with transportation, fire exiting, and other kind of lifestyle things. So, thank you.
Good afternoon, Scott Teach, 40 plus years in Kings Beach, blah, blah, blah. Excuse my stream of consciousness here, I'm going to talk about a couple of different things. To the chair's request earlier that we not repeat things that were said previously. Well, recently at NITRAC, they were told, don't say something somebody said before. But then there was a tally going on, so the things I wanted to reiterate, we didn't get the tally. To the opening comments, and I apologize, everyone did this when I got there. So the opening comments, I can't remember who made them. Thanking all of the business associations for their cooperation. What about North Preservation Alliance, Mountain Area Preservation, Friends of this, Friends of the West Shore? They never get thanked. Why not? Don't they get involved with this stuff? Okay, so because I couldn't say it at the NITRAC meeting recently, I just want to go on board with the amendments. 56 feet is more than high enough in Kings Beach. comments, like I said, stream of consciousness here. And I said this before, if the county feels so strongly that the bi-state agency was such a terrible thing for Placer County, evaluate it, reevaluate their relationship with the TRPA. I believe that their day has come and gone. Redevelopment is a high priority. It was part of the opening statements. Says who? If everything was easy, everybody would do it, right? If living in Lake Tahoe was just a piece of cake, what would we have? To the point about talking about traffic, we have theoretically, running around, fewer people here. We've got 14 projects on the drawing board. Any number of them will bring thousands of vehicular trips daily. We need to reevaluate the cumulative effects and this argument that, well, each one of those developments will have to do their own EIS, I think is a cop-out, frankly. Once again, stream of consciousness. The fabulous effects of the TART on demand. By their own admission, $18 per ride. So I guess that's federal money, and we think that that's a big win. Somebody else mentioned that, the SEPRA, all of the dilapidation here in Kings Beach, with the exception of one project that I know of, the chain link fences belong to the county on the main drag, right? Parking. We're gonna let people do tiny houses and park their Sprinter vans in our already limited parking lots? How does that jive? Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thanks for making the trip to Tahoe. Really appreciate it. I'm Sue Daniels. And I'd like to speak to the fact that, I guess if we're talking about how long we've been here, over 65 years. And the fact that when I grew up and went to school here, we had limited housing. We had the same condition of houses that we have now. Actually, they're better now than they were. When I got my first house after getting married, the roof had caved in. It was held along together with a come-along, and we used wood to burn for 10 years. So yes, workforce housing is a problem. Workforce housing has always been a problem. Workforce housing is a state problem. Workforce housing is a national problem. We are just part of that whole problem. Are we gonna answer it all by allowing big development? That is the question that we're seeing here. Is the state of California gonna allow big development to answer that problem too? I don't think so. As a realtor for the last 35 years, I have sold more houses to full-time residents in the last 2 COVID years than ever in my life. There are more people living here, there are more people working here, and there are businesses that are thriving here. If a business doesn't thrive, it's not necessarily the building's fault or the town center's fault, it might be the business owner's fault. So as a government, should we be trying to correct those kinds of social issues or not? I do want to see more workforce housing. I do believe it's right for people to have a good house. But the density issues of Lake Tahoe need to be regarded, and I do believe that allowing 25-foot lots that were condemned years ago, taken away from families who wanted them, and now putting them back into circulation will raise a question. The question might be, my family lost it, I was paid $4,000 by the Tahoe Conservancy, and now the lot is worth $100,000. Is that a just taking by the government and such? So I think as we consider bringing those back into play, we better consider repetitions of past owners. Height should be addressed. I believe a study should show that the shadow does not leave the property boundaries by more than 5 feet at the winter solstice. I really think that the light affecting the properties behind, you have people on Rainbow and Trout and Brook that used to have lake views and are now going to be in a permafrost. Highway 28 will be in a permafrost if you allow building along the highway to be high. I was on the stakeholder team that helped develop the plan None of us were asked our opinion during this process, and I think that we should be brought back to state why we made the plan the way it was and why it was adopted in 2017 if our comments and our opinions are no longer of any value. Thank you for making sure that this was not ready for prime time and that you're just getting research. Really appreciate that.
Okay, next if we could have Samir Tula, Denton Hawkins, and Bob, and I'm having a hard time reading this, I think it's Fitzwick.
Good afternoon, planning commissioners. Nice to see you up here. My name is Samir Tuma. I'm on board of directors for the North Lake Tahoe Resort Association, and I'm also a hotel workforce housing developer. The last time a hotel was built in this area, the population of California was 17 million people. Today, the population is 39 million people. That's a growth of 22 million people since the last time we built a hotel. The driver for tourism isn't that there's more hotels, it's that there's more population. The consequence of what we have not done in the last 60 years is now we force the tourists into the neighborhoods. We have dilapidated downtowns, we have blighted businesses, we have traffic, we have more and more problems all the time. We haven't built an environment that can adapt to this growth. And that really is the problem. By building more hotels or building more workforce housing, that doesn't bring more people here. What it does is it puts the people who come here in the town centers, allows a centralized business district and gets them out of the neighborhoods. So we do need to build more hotels. There's been discussion around 12, 14 different projects that are in the books. How many of them have been built? The answer is 0. There are still significant impediments to getting these projects done. So what building hotels and building houses doesn't do is bring more people here. Population growth does. What building houses and hotels does is it delivers a better quality of life for the community by consolidating activity in the downtown areas where it should be. What we need is significant more workforce housing. We have, even if we build a number of hotels, and the county has talked about reducing short-term rentals in a 1-to-1 ratio, it's still not going to give us the housing that we need. Most of the housing that's been built up here historically is larger, nicer homes, and that trend continues. What these amendments try to do is make smaller, more affordable by design homes work for the workforce housing, or for the workforce. So the growth is inevitable. We can't change population growth. What we have to do is adapt to it. We're going to put in the infrastructure, the hotels, and the housing that we need in order to make it a livable community. I want to address just one specific issue related to height. There's a lot of noise, a lot of discussion about height, but there's one provision in there about a 5-foot increase for hotels if they meet certain criteria. That increase in no way, shape, or form adds density at all. Density, as you know as planning commissioners, is the number of units per acre that you can build. By having 5 more feet, that doesn't mean I can go more than 40 units per acre. That's capping. So please don't throw out those important pieces. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Denton Hawkins, and I am speaking on behalf of the Bold Works at Tahoe Redevelopment Project in Tahoe City and my partner, William Murphy. We wanted to start by thanking Placer County staff, local businesses, and community members who took the time, made the effort, and provided resources necessary to create the amendments, and to those that made constructive public comments that helped shape them, resulting in what we believe to be beneficial amendments to the planning process in the basin, particularly in the town center's lodging opportunities. We support the TDAP amendments. With regard to our lodging project, the pertinent amendments will provide us with critical base zoning to propose a feasible project and the flexibility to see it succeed. We understand that the amendments relevant to our project do not grant us an absolute right, nor should they, but they will make our proposal to the agencies and the community better. They are not by right entitlements. I want to emphasize, nowhere in the nation is the entitlement process more meticulously scrutinized and strictly imposed to safeguard, for all of us, what is a national treasure, Tahoe. Nowhere, not even on the California Coastal Commission, carries the weight of the agency's task to preserve this area. And they continue to get better and better at it. As a developer, if you're not willing to be subject to the scrutiny and the heat of a community forging its future, you shouldn't be here. And the same holds true to those who can't see a bright future for Tahoe. Thank you all for your efforts, and we hope the Planning Commission will approve the amendments.
Do we have Bob? No, I believe it's Swift. I'm having a hard time reading his writing. Okay, we'll move on to John Eppolito. I believe Alex Morlates and Dan Daniels.
Hi, my name is John Eppolito. I've been selling real estate here locally in California and Nevada for 24 years. We do need workforce housing and we do need redevelopment. The last 2 summers in Kings Beach, it's the most traffic I've seen in the 26 years I've lived here. Since COVID, the population has increased. Sue brought this up. The school, the Incline High School, the population went up about 10% since COVID. So I think you guys need to recheck those numbers. I work in California out of the King building, which is kitty corner to here, that big brick, well, it's big now, but it won't be soon. The big brick building, it's probably less than 30 feet tall. Well, you guys are here, I'm begging you, drive around the back side of that building. There's about 6 to 12 inches of ice on the parking area. It's shaded all the time. Right now, almost noon, the whole back road is covered because that's with a 30-foot building. The whole back road is shaded. The sidewalk, you can ice skate on. I'm not kidding you. Go look at that, please, before you do that to the whole town. I beg you, while you're here, go look. You want to put buildings that are up to 500 feet long and up to 72 feet tall. See what the large building now, the 30-foot building is doing to the road behind it. We don't want Kings Beach to be North Star or Squaw Valley. This summer is the first time I had a client, I sold her a house 20 years ago in Tahoe Vista. She left Tahoe because of what's happening. It's the first client I've had in 24 years to leave the area because of what's happening now and what might get approved. This moderate preferred income, achievable housing, the preferred affordable housing, who's gonna police that? In Incline, we have moderate income housing and low income housing. And you know what? The moderate income housing is being bought by people with a lot of money that pay cash, so they don't have to, and nobody polices it. So if you're gonna have a bunch of this housing, someone needs to police it. It's not done in Incline. And like Scott said, 14 projects, and I think at least one other person, 14 projects are being worked on right now. The cumulative effect of those projects needs to be considered. You guys can't just look at one thing here and there, you know, the Waldorf Astoria, or everything has a cumulative effect, and something that hasn't come up as much at this meeting as others, and that cumulative effect is on especially the emergency evacuation on these 2-lane roads that we have trying to get out of Tahoe. They could barely evacuate South Shore. And what's gonna happen is it's gonna be like July week, 4th of July week, one of these people that's up here for vacation is gonna light the neighborhood on fire. And we're not gonna be able to get out. We need more time. We need, hopefully the fire, will speak to that. They're here, but anyway, thank you very much.
Good afternoon, members of the commission. Thank you for being here. My name is Alex Moralatos. My family owns and I operate the Moralatos Lakeshore Resort in Tahoe Vista. And I'm here to speak in support not only of the code amendments, but in strong support of the process that you are participating in. The Moralatos Lakeshore Resort brought a large workforce housing project to this commission multiple times between the years of 2003 and 2007. It was a proposal for 144 units of affordable housing on 12 acres of our wooded forest. Over that period of time, listening to community input, and frankly, with strong belief in the future that we would have these types of impacts on the planning process, we modified the project to be 80 units, 30 consisting of moderate for sale, 50 to be affordable. Eventually, the funding was pulled to fund the Domus project in Kings Beach, and the parcel remains undeveloped. I'm speaking here partly today as a board member of the Truckee Tahoe Community Foundation that attracts philanthropic funds into our North Tahoe region in the areas of community wellness, forest health, and workforce housing. The later represented in the Mountain Housing Council of Truckee Tahoe that brings together 27 stakeholders working on collaborative workforce housing solutions. But I'm also here as an investor, and I want to endorse the process and during that process of trying to acquire two motels in the core of Kings Beach that currently serve non-code compliant workforce housing and eventually could be sold and developed into something everybody in this room would not like. I sought to leverage the plan and to convert those to code compliant, plan achieving, vision achieving, walkable, livable workforce housing. One of the parcels also had the 25-foot wide parcel that was a perfect opportunity for tiny home development. I walked away from both because the code, the zoning differences between TRPA and Placer County in the commercial code represented significant risk. And so my message to you is this: the process has worked. Your staff has listened to investors who are willing to put money down and invest the risk associated with building and keeping things as they are. But we are leaving or holding back until these modifications are made that enable us to go through with less risk. If you do it for us and the current landowners who are sitting there waiting on these parcels of dilapidated motels in our grid, and they offer a significant opportunity not only to retain, but to achieve the vision of what we're trying to do with this plan. And the limited resources that were spoken of, that are capped, that are clear, this is only an effort to properly allocate them to motivate the investors to come in and do the right thing by the plan to achieve the plan. I encourage you to support the code amendments. Thank
you. Hi, Dan Daniels, North Tahoe. I'm here to speak about the thing I speak about every time, and that's fire. When you look at the parking lot here during the summertime, you'll see that the parking lot is full. All of the streets going north and south have cars parked on both sides of the road. And there's not enough room for a fire engine to get through, no less an emergency vehicle. And the parking along there, you guys we need to put some signs up, parking only on one side. People will not get out of here if there is a fire, because I live up on 267 up in Kingswood West, and the cars go from the stoplight on 267 all the way up to the turn on 267. There's no way out of here. If we get a serious fire, people are going to be stuck here. I really think that you guys should take this seriously. I don't care if we do it here in this mode or some other place, but it is a serious topic. Now, a lot of the PUDs have pumped water up to the tanks, and they don't run their diesel back up. The first thing that's going to happen are the power lines are going to burn down, and then they'll try to start their diesels. Well, they're not starting them every week like they do at the ski area, or every month, to make sure that they have additive in the diesel and it'll start. Those things aren't happening. You know, the fire department, I'm sure they think that everything's ready, but everything's not ready. We need a serious plan to get out of here, and it's not happening. That's about it, thanks.
Okay, next if we could get Leah Kaufman, Ginger Coltrane, and Dan Eggenberger.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to be here. My name is Leah Kaufman. I'm a 43-year land planner. I live and work in Tahoe Vista. I'm well aware of Alex's project and the community did weigh in on it. I just wanted to say that. I'm not affiliated with any of the projects that are currently on the books before you. I agree with Megan. There were 37 of us in the community that we were on the community plan team. Our names are right here. And not one of us was asked to solicit input into these amendments. According to the PowerPoint presentation, there were 7 stakeholders from the business community, not the public and not second homeowners and tourists. My letter addresses that I've submitted about 14 or 15 issues, and I've tried to be incredibly positive, and I've offered suggestions and also requested clarification. So I'm really happy that this is being continued. My concerns are removal of the special use to allowable use takes away the public input. TRP rules of procedure, and I brought that and I'll submit it, require that there's noticing, section 12.14. And they either have to have notice to affected property owners, or they have to be a hearings officer if it's special use, giving the neighbors and everybody a chance to input. 15 multiple family units with no parking requirements located a half a mile from the town center could present incredible impacts to the neighbors. And I think that there's other ways to look at it. The town of Windsor has some incredible information for all of us. I talked to their land planners yesterday. They have live work housing. It's in 3 stories. They're incredibly proud of their town. And they say that they struggle with the parking demands between the downtown and the residences. They have a certain requirement. Once they've reduced it, I think somebody here said, I think it was John said that maybe reducing would be good. But I put in my letter all kinds of different things that I thought might help. The other thing is there's 3,900 short-term rental entitlements. 3,420 of them have been used as of December 5th, leaving 660 more. That's a lot of short-term rentals that have definitely impacted workforce housing. I started out many years ago, and I was fortunate enough to be able to live, that's 3 minutes? Oh my goodness. Well, that's not even a 16th of what I wanted to talk about. I do support many of the amendments. I don't support the height. I don't support the 500 million. But I think we need to get our plan team members back to talk about the density of cumulative impacts and everything else that we did in 2012 through 17. Thank you.
We have Ginger Coltrane. How about Dan Eggenberger? William Dengler.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is William Dangler. I'm the president of Sierra Bay Development. I want to say thank you to the commissioner, staff, and everyone present and watching remote, as obviously the Tahoe Basin plan is very important to all of us. I speak to you today as a small developer and an investor now living full-time in Tahoe City with an eye on developing workforce housing. I speak to you as someone who spent years designing and redrafting affordable housing developments in the city of Sacramento before moving to Tahoe full-time to pursue my dreams of living on the lake with my daughter. Workforce housing will not be a priority for many of the potential private investors and developers unless they're able to have some type of comparative benefit to entice them away from market rate multifamily and mixed-use alternatives. That would be a mixture of tax credits, county contributions, housing voucher contributions, and fast tracks so they can get through their entitlement processes. Having fast track entitlement process for these types of projects, especially in town centers, that would remove barriers to investment and total project timeline from conceptualization to full occupancy is necessary and obviously a critical item in the new Tahoe Basin area plan that's being proposed today. There seems to be a contingent of residents in every community that tend to oppose developers and development. And that would cause a wall, or that wall to development certainly exists in the Tahoe Basin, as we all know. As a developer who is now working to design and submit workforce housing options in the North Lake region specifically and working with Placer County, I speak on behalf of those attempting to knock out some of the units in a 4,000 unit shortage for our workforce housing in this area. Many people aren't aware of how deep that housing shortage is. And even some of the local workforce themselves, we're asking that whoever is listening and watching this now, consider less pushback to some of the new development that's coming, especially where it applies to workforce housing projects. Not all development is a negative thing, especially when you consider that we have locals and workforce who need quality affordable housing options. And that can be deed restricted and maintained indefinitely for this community. I agree that designs need to respect density, height, and traffic considerations as far as maintaining the beautification of the Tahoe Basin, of which I am a giant fan. I only ask that our community and all the powers that be that can support these projects consider and evaluate which projects they are going to push back against or ultimately support. We need people to think and put their hearts and their brains together so that we can knock out this housing issue. It's not going to solve itself. Thank you very much for your time today.
Christina Hill.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. Thank you, staff, for your work. I'm all for workforce housing. I'm all for streamlining review of, projects for Placer County. It's very difficult. And as a 40-year land use planner, it's very, very difficult. So that's a great purpose of these amendments. However, I have a problem as a former TRPA employee and a TRPA land use consultant. Every project that I do, you have to make certain findings that the project that you're proposing does not exceed the thresholds that were established back in 1981 by the bi-state compact. And that was when I worked at TRPA, it was in the 1980s. And it is really important to me that we see those findings. And I haven't seen them. And I haven't heard anybody talk about them or that they're even going to be done. But the thresholds cannot be exceeded. And you can't just say, oh, we're not increasing density, or we're not doing anything that's going to exceed the thresholds. Well, show me the findings. That's important. And part of those findings need to include cumulative impacts of all the projects that are currently in the books, including the development at Palisades. And I echo the comments that were submitted to you in writing by the League to Save Lake Tahoe, that the reason the Palisades big project previously didn't get approved is because they didn't look at cumulative impacts of projects that were also in the books that Placer County was going to
be required to be, was gonna improve. And they needed to, evaluate those cumulative impacts, and that was why they got sued. And I don't think you guys wanna get sued again, so I think it's important that, we are able to review the thresholds, and you can show us that you comply and don't exceed the thresholds with these amendments, and also show the cumulative impacts of everything that's being proposed in accordance with the things that are already in the books. Thank you very much.
Okay, that's everybody on our list. We can have people online.
Let's see, is there anyone else here in person? Okay.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Hagedorn Schissel. I've lived in Tahoe since '63, watched a lot of changes. My biggest concerns as going through my parents at the end of life, there were numerous times I had to take them to the hospital. That would not have been possible now. My dad would not have made it on 3 separate occasions. I also live in the shadow if it's 70 feet. We don't have sidewalks on our street. That would be an ice skating rink. We have lots of families. I know we have to do the workforce housing. I know we need to come in and do different things. We can't even drive down the road right now. If you drive between here and Palisades, there are many potholes that will swallow your tires. We haven't even begun to address that yet, or it's been addressed, but it's back there somewhere. So, can we at least get the infrastructure before we bring more people? I sat in traffic. I left my house at 7 o'clock to go teach a family friend how to ski. After 6 hours, I did not make it, and I turned around and came home. Just please consider what you're thinking of in a mountain community. Thank you.
Anyone else here in person? Okay, oh, yes?
Anybody else?
Come on up.
My name is Paul Dow. I was Lake Tahoe appraisers. I have the highest real estate license in California, Nevada, and the only one that can appraise commercial industrial. I first got involved with this Clark project that started out the Brown project when Brown contacted me in 2005 and asked me questions regarding appraising the property, and I asked him a simple question: why are you doing this now when the transition year is going to be sometime at the end of this year, and by 2010 we're going to be in a depression? And so I didn't understand the project from the beginning. I watched that there's been incredible amounts, millions and millions of dollars that have now been spent by Placer County, and I wonder about the hypocrisy of the county. In fact, when you go from state line through the commercial corridor at Kings Beach, the properties owned by the county that are fenced up, nobody seems to care about doing anything with them at the county. The epitome of it, I would say, is the property just east of the post office in Kings Beach, where a property that the county owns, as far as I understand. You've got a building with the roof that's been completely collapsed. Why has that not been demolished? And then the only other thing, I like the comments that Scott Tisch made and some of Leo's comments. I don't have any prepared statement today because I thought this was at 6 o'clock. But at any rate, I was instrumental in convincing TRPA to raise the height to 56 feet. I'm against the additional 14 feet that is being proposed, and I don't know and I'm not familiar with everything else that's involved. The only other thing that I would like to bring up, which I haven't heard, I didn't get here at the beginning of the meeting, because I was only notified at the last minute, I raced down here, so anyway, I don't like the potential, well, I think it's more than potential, I think it's clear conflict of interest that our one representative on the North Shore is Cindy Gustafson, and the system seems to be go to Wally Auerbach, her boyfriend, so that then she has to recuse herself. I think in this situation, she should retire herself. And that's about all I have to say at this point. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to online.
Christina Kine, go ahead and unmute yourself, and you'll have 3 minutes to make your comment.
Thank you, Commission. My name is Christina Kind. I am making comment on behalf of the Mountain Housing Council, which is a program of the Tahoe Truckee Community Foundation and brings together 29 diverse partners to accelerate housing solutions. The Commission has heard from many of our partners here who have been working with us for more than 5 years through extensive engagement to bring housing solutions to the region. One of the Mountain Housing Council's goals is to promote the development of achievable housing. We know that we have a critically short workforce housing units in our region. According to our 2021 Housing Needs Assessment, East Placer County is short 1,847 workforce units. We also know that about 9,000 individuals work inside our Tahoe Truckee Unified School District boundary, but live elsewhere. To this end, the Mountain Housing Council facilitates regional alignment of strategy, policies, and resources that increase housing for workers who live and work in our region. Over the years, our collaboration has identified the need to prioritize the need for achievable local housing to include both affordable and missing middle, which will have a positive impact on our neighborhoods by increasing the supply of affordable, adequate homes available to our permanent workforce, bringing our in-community workers back to the region. Diversity of housing inventory beyond single-family units, and the need to remove regulatory barriers to accelerate timelines and make the housing we need for our workforce to pencil. We recognize the unique environment that we are all here to protect and enjoy. We understand that change can be hard and can come at a cost if not thoughtfully informed. Placer County has been an engaged partner to Mountain Housing Council for more than 5 years. They have sat on numerous Tiger teams and working groups to ensure that they are working in coordination and alignment with the community. Part of our charge as a partnership is to not just convene and understand the problems, but to take action and do our best with the information, resources, and leadership available to help alleviate our housing crisis. Together, we recognize that there is no one solution or silver bullet, and we must do our best to design a multi-approach of programs, policy, and incentives. Our region needs to take a responsive step towards recognizing and taking into account the circumstances underlying our local housing crisis. We seek incentives that will lead to housing that gives our local workers and their families the ability to rent, enjoy home ownership at below market rates, and be engaged in contributing community members. We want to recognize Placer County for their thoughtful leadership and authentic engagement with the Mountain Housing Partnership and commend their collaborative, thoughtful, and strategic action. Thank you for your time.
Claire Novak, you can go ahead and unmute, and you'll have 3 minutes to make your comment.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to join you here today. I'm Reverend Claire Novak. I'm a longtime year-round resident of Tahoe Vista and a team leader of United for Action, a partner of the Mountain Housing Council and the Washoe Tahoe Housing Partnership. United for Action is a long-standing North Tahoe Truckee coalition, over 100 strong, of faith-based organizations and community activists. Our mission is to meet the basic needs of our neighbors: food, shelter, clothing, and our primary focus now is the related crises of homelessness and workforce housing in our area. Like you, our vision is to create a thriving, vibrant community that has housing options to support our local residents, workforce, and businesses. We believe that if you work in Lake Tahoe, you should be able to live in Lake Tahoe. That is our community vision. And so I encourage you, the commissioners, to recommend the adoption of these amendments to the Board of Supervisors. These amendments will help our workers access affordable, moderate, achievable housing in the Tahoe Basin area by supporting diverse, multifamily, multi-person housing types, by shifting lodging from short-term rentals to high-quality lodging, and that will help free up more long-term rentals for workers. And they will also remove regulatory barriers. So I urge you to recommend the adoption of these amendments to the Board of Supervisors to allow more multiple family, multi-person employee housing options. Workforce housing is essential to our community health and well-being. Thank you very much.
Toby, please unmute your mic and you'll have 3 minutes to make your comment.
Can you hear me? I'm assuming you can hear me. My name is Toby Tyler, and I'm with the Tahoe Area Group of the Sierra Club. We've written 2 letters regarding the county's proposal to amend their Tahoe Basin Area Plan. I won't read them, but am incorporating them by reference into my comments here. We appreciate changing this item to informational only. We agree that workforce housing is needed, but achievable is not affordable to the workforce, and there is no enforcement done to ensure that housing that's built is actually affordable. We also agree with the comments from the community members who have spoken up against these amendments. The main thing I'd like to emphasize is that it's extremely important that the county comply fully with the California Environmental Quality Act and not use CEQA exemptions for these amendments, which are wide-ranging and, given the information provided, will most assuredly pose significant environmental impacts on transportation, greenhouse gas emissions, water quality, scenic, climate, and evacuation hazards over a 72 square mile area. The public needs much more information than has been provided and needs to be able to review and comment on a thorough analysis of the impacts. Just saying that these amendments don't increase density does not make it so. Details must be provided to prove this claim. The entire basin is in a high fire danger area, so relying on what was stated in the 2016 EIR is not acceptable, since there was no actual evidence provided, only conjecture, such as, quote, impacts would likely be immeasurable, and roadways, quote, would likely be controlled by emergency personnel, unquote. Regarding using TRPA VMT standards, those were revised and no longer exist as such, and therefore a full analysis of how this plan would affect transportation in the basin needs to be done. The climate change impacts need to be fully analyzed with permanent, enforceable, verifiable, and quantifiable performance standards. Likewise, cumulative impacts must be fully analyzed. Deferring and delegating to TRPA is not acceptable. In addition, a thorough analysis of past mitigation measures that have not been completed or were ineffective needs to be done. Basing these amendments on a highly speculative highly speculative economic study is also unacceptable. That concludes my comments.
Aaron, go ahead and unmute your mic and you'll have 3 minutes to make your comment.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Erin Casey. I have lived and worked in the North Lake Tahoe area since 2004. Raised my daughter here, attended Kings Beach Elementary and North Lake Tahoe Middle School and High School. And I have to say, since that time frame, for me, housing has definitely been a challenge. Whether it was finding housing, accepting less than ideal living conditions, landlords who take advantage of tenants who have limited options, That has been my experience over the years, and being able to maintain housing in this region since that time has always been a significant source of uncertainty and stress for myself and my family. And I recognize that I am not alone in this. I would like to highlight something I think that has not been shared with your commission today, and that is the Placer County's critical success factors, which were adopted by the board in 2019 to guide the next 3 to 5 years in decision making. More specifically, Placer County's a strategic plan was established to guide future growth of the county over the next 3 to 5 years. The action-oriented plan outlined strategies, initiatives, and results on which the county will work collaboratively to deliver what our community needs. That strategic plan included 8 strategic initiatives called critical success factors. And the number 2 critical success factor on that list is diversity of achievable housing throughout the county. More specifically, what it states is the county will initiate and facilitate efforts to ensure that people of all income ranges can attain housing, which, as you've heard from many people today, myself included, is very difficult in our region. Additionally, this critical success factor states that we support efforts that expand existing workforce housing, encourage new construction, and improve land use planning regulations that provide a mix of housing types. So I wanted to draw your attention to this because the board has established diversity of housing as a key strategic measure. And specifically, I believe what county staff have brought to you today is consistent and aligned with that critical success factor. So I would encourage your commission to take a look at that as you contemplate these proposed changes, which, by the way, I do support fully based on what's been presented. The other item I wanted to reference is the Placer County Measure A ballot. Recently, the voters of Eastern Placer County approved a 2% additional transient occupancy tax rate in Eastern Placer County by almost 90%. 89.97% of voters supported this 2% increase. The ballot language on that measure states, to maintain North Lake Tahoe's local critical quality of life services such as addressing workforce housing needs, reducing traffic congestion, and trash litter in public places and streets. So workforce housing needs was the first priority item listed on that ballot, and 89.97% of voters voted in favor of that increase. So I think that demonstrates the support in our region for workforce housing measures. I do want to quickly add at the end of my comments here, I've heard a lot of comments today regarding the other issues that I think are tied to this, whether it's fire, whether it's traffic congestion, whether it's our ability to be able to evacuate. And I think those are all important conversations. And I do want to mention that there are many efforts that the county is making currently to address those issues, and as well as in partnership with the North Lake Tahoe Resort
I don't think you can see it, but your time is expired. And
oh, sorry. Okay. I just wanted to mention that the Resort Association will be conducting surveys in the community consistent with what's been requested today. Thank you so much for your time.
thank you.
Pamela, go ahead and unmute your mic and you'll have 3 minutes to make your comment. Pamela, if you can hear me, I need you to unmute your mic. Judith, go ahead and unmute your mic and you'll have 3 minutes to make your comment.
Okay, I am Judith Cornelius. I'm president of Friends of the West Shore, and we did write a comment letter. We appreciate the Planning Commission's decision to allow more time to review and understand these proposed amendments. They do present a big impact to the community. I'd like to highlight a few items. First of all, we need some examples of how development would look with the new amendments. Including large and small projects. There's some concern about smaller projects. We want to make sure there is that there continues to be proper notice to the community and hearings on any projects. Secondly, there's some confusion about height, which is a big concern. The presentation noted that that 56 feet would be the baseline or the base height allowance. The 2017 area plan says 3 stories, which is generally considered to be equivalent to 36 feet. So a question, how do you get from 3 stories to 56 feet versus 36 feet? Also, thirdly, Friends of the West Shore does support affordable housing at like Motherhood and Apple Pie, but there's no mention of any tax incentives and government subsidies to build such affordable workforce housing. So we'd appreciate some more information on how this could help with affordable housing. Lastly, it's very important to consider the cumulative impacts of these projects that are already in the pipeline, not even including the new ones that might be coming up. So especially concerning emergency evacuation. We look forward to more details and community review. Thank you very much.
Elise, go ahead and unmute your mic and you have 3 minutes to make your comment.
Hello, I'm Elise Fett. I'm an architect and engineer. I've been living and working on the North Shore for 30 years. The need for affordable housing and improvements in our town centers is obvious and a true passion of mine. As are safe, wide bike paths and improved evacuation. I see good and I see bad in these code changes. The good, the added street side setback, front setback requirement I think is good to keep some consistency. I agree with the allowing of a 0-foot setback for duplexes and them having a 10-foot side setback. I agree with removing the use permits. I'm not exactly clear on that, but it sounds good if it's expediting the process, which is very time-consuming and cumbersome, in particular for ADUs for individual homeowners. I love the idea of allowing narrower lots for tiny homes in the Kings Beach industrial area that can then have modular tiny homes. I appreciate the standards allowing movable tiny homes. That's great. However, it has to be they have to be thoughtfully located and they have to have services as far as restrooms, et cetera, et cetera. And then there's the concerning ones. So in particular, we are not like South Shore in any way or North Star, and we don't want to be. So if we could, just take these height standards and leave them as is, encourage all of this affordable housing to be in the neighborhoods. It helps the people that do own their homes, that are trying to pay their taxes, to have an ADU and have that income. And it's a win-win-win situation for them. So encourage that, encourage the tighter density on the duplexes. But taking away people's light by these tall buildings, you must appreciate the value of natural light and heat from the sun. That passive sun is amazing, and people deserve to keep that and have that. Therefore, and then the parking, the standards cannot be reduced. Use underground parking like Banff or Aspen, and put parking in the back as a transition to the residential, therefore allowing sun to them. So suggestions, heights remain as is. More transition between the zones. Make it easier for individuals to permit and deed restricted ADUs within the neighborhoods. Suggest temporary pervious pavers are used for parking and a fee that can be paying for new improved
Elise, your
safer
time
bike
is
paths.
up.
Okay, the bike paths wider evacuation plan. Use the bike paths as an evacuation, make them safer, make them wider. Please, let's get that going.
Emily, please unmute your mic and you have 3 minutes to make your comments.
Thank you. Good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Emily Vitus. I am the executive director of the Truckee Tahoe Workforce Housing Agency. Instead of repeating what's been said today, I just want to express support for the comments of Aaron Casey, Alex Morlatos, Samir Tuma, Tahoe Prosperity Center, Mountain Housing Council, and others speaking in favor of the amendments, with an emphasis on the workforce housing related benefits that will result from them. The Workforce Housing Agency represents 7 public agencies that employ over 2,300 members of our community. Our member agencies are currently Placer County, Nevada County, the town of Truckee, the hospital district, the school district, the airport district, and the Truckee-Donner Public Utility District. 90% of our employees make more than 80% AMI and cannot qualify for affordable housing opportunities. It is imperative that we look at ways to increase the middle income housing stock, and these amendments can help us to do that. It's not only about affordable housing, it's about housing stock in general. I would like to share a few statistics from our employee survey administered this summer that I'm hopeful you'll take into consideration as you consider the amendments. Roughly 25% of the employees who responded that we represent currently live in Eastern Placer County, and many of those respondents reference living in housing that doesn't fit their needs as it relates to affordability, size, quality, etc. We also had people referencing living in the basin and being unhoused and living in motels just so they can serve our community. Over 30% of respondents commute into the Tahoe Truckee area for work, slightly lower for the basin, but still significant. And that number continues to increase, and it does impact regional traffic congestion. 12% of respondents lost their stable housing during the pandemic. While many moved out of the area as a result, others continue to struggle to find stable housing that they can afford because the stock that was available to them in the basin before the pandemic no longer exists. And finally, nearly 45% of respondents said that they'd be interested in living in or remaining in Eastern Placer County over the next 5 years if there was accessible, affordable housing. These are the respondents, they're the young professionals, they're contributing community members that currently live in or serve the basin who greatly contribute to its overall well-being and vibrancy. We will lose them if we don't consider major changes in the way we're approaching housing. Taking our urgent housing needs into account, we believe the proposed housing-related amendments to the Tahoe Basin Area Plan could support the increase of desperately needed housing stock in Eastern County, and we support them as presented. Thank you to Placer County for your work on this. We know how hard staff has been working to present amendments that respond to the needs of your region, and thank you for your consideration.
Gavin, go ahead and unmute your mic and you'll have 3 minutes to make your comments.
Great, thank you. Yes, Gavin Feiger on behalf of the League to Save Lake Tahoe. As you probably know, the League's dedicated to protecting and restoring environmental health, sustainability, and the scenic beauty of the Tahoe Basin. We were a key stakeholder in the years leading up to the 2017 adoption of the TBAP, and we've tracked progress and amendments since. We've been following these amendments, these proposed amendments very closely through public meetings with county planning staff, and meetings with members of the public and community, and really appreciate everybody's hard work. This is no easy task. We submitted written comments that I hope you've all had time to read. I'll briefly summarize our main points in case not. The things we like right off the top are focusing the remaining development allowed in Placer County under TRP's regional plan is being focused into town and village centers, something we approve of. We really like the deed restricted housing and mixed use development requirements in town centers, and we fully support the county's parking changes as proposed. We need to find places for people to live, not for cars. They require frontage improvements. Again, that's a really good one. And the last big one that we fully support, or that we support, is in theory the guide for allocation and conversion of commodities. So then some of our concerns. That same guide for allocation and conversion of commodities, it needs a public process when it's developed instead of just done at staff level, and it should be adaptively managed to make sure we're meeting goals and actually encouraging the affordable housing and mixed use development in town centers. Height, heard a lot about that today. We prefer to keep the TRPA's max of 56 feet in town centers, 46 feet in village centers, and then the 10% for appurtenances, which is a word I learned through these amendments. And our third main concern right now is cumulative impacts, especially those not considered under the regional plan and the 2017 TBAP. So that's all the projects in progress, and especially the Palisades specific plan. Also need to note Truckee's general plan update that's currently ongoing, which will also bring more traffic into Tahoe based on that analysis. The Palisades project is just a few miles from the edge of the TBAP plan area, and it will undermine the county's ability to measure and mitigate the environmental impacts on the plan area. Largely because of the impacts from Palisades and somewhat from Truckee and all the projects in play, a full CEQA analysis must be conducted, including effects from projects that will be encouraged by the TBAP amendments and near basin projects such as Palisades. Considering this meeting turned into an info only and there is a need for a CEQA analysis, there's a couple things that we think would improve the proposal before it's heard by the Planning Commission again, and then eventually supervisors and TRPA. One, and this has been brought up a couple of times, and we also detail this in our written comments, is a review and report on the progress towards mitigation and achieving goals and policies from the original 2017 TBAP, the 2021 amendments to it, and the 2020 Resort Triangle Transportation Plan, which is just starting to be implemented. The Resort Triangle Transportation Plan, along with mitigation measures in the amendments and the regional plan, are what are supposed to offset a lot of the impacts, the environmental impacts related to the growth in the TBAP plan area. The second thing that we think would improve it, and this has also been brought up, is visuals. Thank you. So yeah, visuals is the last thing that we think would be helpful, and that's been brought up. Really appreciate the time.
Okay.
Hi, Nick, go ahead and unmute your mic and you'll have 3 minutes to make your comment.
Hi, hello. Just passing you over to Nick now.
Hi, thank you so much for your time, Planning Commissioner. I really appreciate the time to speak today. My name is Nick Exline, and I'm a land use planning consultant here in Tahoe. And I've worked on multiple planning documents throughout the Tahoe Basin. And one of the things I've heard referenced today kind of repeatedly is that we adopted a planning document and we should be good to go. But like NASA, if we're going to be developing things, we need to make sure they work. And unfortunately, the area plan amendment did not work to bring back redevelopment and to support affordable housing. Housing is the singular greatest issue our community faces. Many commenters have spoke about fire preparedness, but where would we be when our firemen cannot live in the Tahoe Basin? Those directing traffic to get us out in the event of a fire cannot live in the Tahoe Basin. I am generally supportive of all these amendments, specifically because they're directly related to housing. In particular, I'd like to discuss the height amendment. Just to clear up a few things, the actual height increase would be for 5 feet for very specific projects. They would have to go through the very arduous TRPA and Placer County scenic review processes, including not breaking up ridge lines and extending above the forest canopy. Those projects seeking to gain additional height would be required to provide up to 15% affordable housing, everything incentivizing our desire to have affordable housing. As it relates to environment, the single greatest impact we have to the clarity of our lake is water runoff. Most of these areas do not have BMPs and do not best management practices required by TRPA and do not meet current water quality standards. As it relates to climate change, our single greatest emittance in the Tahoe Basin is our energy inefficient structures. We need to develop strategies to retrofit and redevelop our energy efficient structures with renewable energy and sustainability practices that currently don't exist, and the area plan doesn't incentivize. And I think we need to look at this all in context. As we look at global matters, we understand whether it be the conflict in Ukraine or issues throughout the globe, the problem of housing. There are people in our own communities tonight suffering with housing. And so I encourage the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors to move forward with approval of this suite of amendments to allow for housing to commence forward. Thank you so much for your time.
Craig, go ahead and unmute your mic and you'll have 3 minutes to make your comments.
How many more? Is there quite a few more?
1, 2, 3, 5.
5 more? Okay.
Hello, Planning Commission and staff who's there. My name is Craig Lemons, and I am in Kings Beach. So I'm speaking on my own behalf, but also for 8 of my fellow homeowners and neighbors. So we feel that the proposed amendments will change the character of North Lake Tahoe, and we are all against them. You know, specifically, we think that they will increase the density. Currently, traffic is in the summer. If anybody's been up there and tried to drive from Kings Beach to Tahoe City, you can't get through. So that would be one thing we're concerned about. But really, one of our big concerns is the height of the proposed changes to allow buildings to be so tall. We're all very concerned about that, and we would like to see that drawn back to the previous height. And also, and I think it was John Eppolito said this, a 500-foot building is just huge. So I think that some of the numbers should be restricted on that. Thank you for all the work you're doing. We know it's a tough job, and I appreciate it, and so do my friends. And that's my comments. Thank you.
Tim, go ahead and unmute your mic and you have 3 minutes to make your comments.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak. I really appreciate it. So you guys can all hear me, correct? Everything's good?
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. Money. Gimme. I want. And then my Russian grandmother, she would pull her teeth out and she would chase me around the house. It was kind of brutal. She was a pretty rough lady. This whole thing here with what's going on here is all about money, and so it's a real concern for me here. You want to raise these buildings and everything, that's larger than the Angora cliffs they used to dive off of. And, the owner of the Angora Lake Cabins, he was my 3rd grade teacher in Al Tahoe Elementary. So, I just wonder about this North Tahoe and Incline Village and Kings Beach and Tahoe City and all that sort of stuff. Those are cozy, sleepy communities. That's the way we like it. This stuff with huge buildings, garish buildings, and all these extra people coming in, it's not what the community wants. And the thing is here, I'm going to give you some examples here. Lead cables, Carson River, right? Yarrington, U.S. Marine Corps, North Carolina, Flint, Michigan, Manhattan Nuke Project waste under an elementary school, gnarly. Errol C, Great Salt Lake, Washington State. Here's one for you. EDA, Mentor Graphics, okay? I worked here at Mentor Graphics, and I worked for Lockheed Martin. I am the computer engineer that had his hands all over the flight computer for the Spitzer Space Telescope and the Mars missions, okay? So my degree is in engineering physics, and it's all things engineering. And I understand the concept of water pollution and ecological collapse. That's what these things all have in common here. These people, around the Aral Sea, for example, in southern Russia, hey, they were conflicted. They wanted jobs too. And they built and diverted the water and this and that and everything else. And it went on and they could never stop. and then the entire watershed collapsed. Okay, that's what you have here in our country right now with the Great Salt Lake. So there's specific things I really don't like this underground parking stuff. No way. Okay, water migrates through mountains. Okay, there's going to be interaction there. Okay, it's not completely contained. I know that, you know, when you have a big snowpack, that water pressure there actually pressurizes the Central Valley and the Santa Cruz Mountains here. Okay, so, you know, I'm a serious engineer. I control everything that comes into my body. I clean my own water. I grow my own food. All right. And I really understand these ecological and environmental issues here. And you're completely tapped. You folks are out of water. Even in the 20th century, that was really, you know, pretty wet when you consider over the last 10,000 years or so. All right. You're out of water and your environment is constrained.
Your time has expired.
Okay. Thank you very much. You guys have a fine day.
Ron, go ahead and unmute your mic, and you have 3 minutes to make your comments. Ron, if you can hear me, please unmute your mic. Heidi, please unmute your mic and you'll have 3 minutes to make your comment.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Heidi Hill-Drum, and I'm the CEO of the Tahoe Prosperity Center. I know that our housing program manager already spoke, but I would like to add in a few additional thoughts for the record and also from a personal perspective. I really struggle with all the speakers who love to start their comments with, well, I really support workforce housing or I support affordable housing, but then oppose these simple changes that are proposed in the area plan amendments. The problem is you can't actually have it both ways. You either support adding workforce housing by improving the incentives, including higher density, additional height and coverage, or you really actually oppose local housing. Our current system does not work for housing projects to pencil. It only works for $2 million condominium projects and luxury second home projects. If we really do want to support housing for families like myself, I'm married to a firefighter and I'm a nonprofit director, then we need major changes in our area plan, of which these amendments are a start. They aren't enough, in my opinion, because I actually don't think they will really move the needle on any workforce housing projects. And you've already heard the specific comments that we've proposed to help move the needle. You've already heard 5 feet in height is not really enough to make or break a project. On a personal note, I live here in Tahoe Vista, and my landlord just raised our rent because they can. So now I'm back out there in the market trying to find another more reasonably priced rental. I also qualified for the Workforce Housing Preservation Program, which we think is a really great start, but there is absolutely nothing in the market currently in our price range. So that isn't working for us either, sadly. But mostly I also wanted to join today to thank your county staff for all their hard work. I know we don't thank them enough for their dedication and all the hard work that they put in behind the scenes. But I want you to know that you have incredibly smart, capable staff on the that have given you a strong area plan amendment that I hope you recommend for approval. Thank you.
Jim, go ahead and unmute your mic and you'll have 3 minutes to make your comment.
Yeah, Jim Sadak. I'm a resident of both sections of Placer County. And we really need to look at the money before it looks like the county is trying to put money before safety. And it's our number one requirement and concern is to make sure, first of all, that we have a safe operation, safe development here for the community. So what I would suggest is that we look at the existing infrastructure and get approval or confirmation that it's large enough to handle whatever load we're presenting for evacuation. Also, the size of the buildings, 500 feet in length and over 50 to 60 feet tall. Has there been any communication with the North Tahoe Fire District? They are going to have to go to those buildings and properly, put out the fires and respond without putting their life in danger. Also, on the North Shore, we have, I haven't figured it out, but roughly say over 10,000 people between, Placer County here on the east side of Placer County, plus the tourists, plus the additional people that would come from these developments. And we have no hospital for the community. The community hospital is in Truckee. And as a resident also of Placer County down here in Roseville, for a simple chest x-ray, I sat in the hospital for over 8 hours one night, not even during peak COVID, for a chest x-ray. We were out in the hallway and I couldn't even get into the back section of the hospital because they were limiting the number of people that they would allow back there. And I had to take my mother-in-law to the hospital as a caregiver. Was the only way that I could get through the door to be with her. So I would say to check with Tahoe Forest Hospital, make sure we've got that in place for whatever development you guys are looking at. The North Tahoe Fire District, size of evacuation on the roads. And I was a resident down in Fairfield, and I used, as a rental, I used the Section 8 program down there for my rental house. And I'll tell you, it sounds kind of weird, but that was the best program that I ever got involved with any of my tenants. Section 8 came in and they supplemented their income to, depending on their family size. I had to make sure that that house was completely up to snuff. And the advantage to having the Section 8 oversee the program was they would stop in at any time and check on the family. And if anything was out of place, the grass wasn't green, they were cutting back on the water, they were damaging the house, they would lose their benefits through the Section 8 program. So those tenants were actually the best tenants I've ever had. And I was guaranteed payment as a homeowner instead of chasing around a regular tenant. So please take these comments seriously. And I do support, the Section 8 or something similar to help with the affordable housing. And I don't think we need to bring in big development and a whole bunch more people that we have to take care of just to achieve that goal of affordable housing. Thank you very much.
Anyone else here in person that haven't spoken, wish to speak still? Do an in-person check again. Okay, I'm gonna, at this point, close public comment. And thank everyone for their sharing and appreciate their thoughts. I'm gonna invite staff back up to address them or talk about it, or if you would like to share anything. I know there's a lot, is there anything you want to add or say? I know it's an informational item, but is there anything you guys want to say?
I think we would be available to answer questions, just because today is an information item.
Okay, commissioners, you want to?
May I?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I would say thank you to everyone who spoke today. It's a lot to absorb. I don't know about you, but I'm a bit overwhelmed. Have lots of notes, have lots of research to do, and I don't really have much to comment on at this moment in time. I feel like I need to go back, read questions, and see what staff comes back with after working with the community with their concerns. That's how I feel. So I don't really have any questions. I appreciate the reports, and I appreciate the community coming out and speaking their mind. And I honestly think we can come to some sort of conclusion or solution that makes everyone happy. And thank you again for giving that extra time. It's appreciated.
Well, that's loud. Don't have anything to add. There's a lot to absorb. Definitely, I'll be talking with staff if I have questions as I go through. My intent is to go through the red line version and listening to all the comments today, you know, heard about the height, heard about fire safety, heard about the character of Tahoe. And one of the things I think we need to look at is how do we maintain that character of North Lake Tahoe, Kings Beach, or Tahoe City as it differs from other portions of the Lake Tahoe Basin in these guidelines. So I'll be looking at that specifically and talking with you as you continue to look at and update this document. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess I really don't have much to add. I have looked through the documents pretty well so far. I did hear a lot of comments today and appreciated those. And so as we go forward, we'll see where we come out, but it's probably a good thing that we're taking a little more time.
Agree, appreciate everyone's comments. The public opinion is really important to me. We take it seriously. We understand the preservation of Tahoe. We understand the importance of that. And we have an issue. We got some issues trying to address some of that. So thank you for your comments. I appreciate staff's presentation. Very well done. And we look forward to how your comments influence the report and amendments. So do we need a vote because it is an item? And
as I was going through this, the agenda does list it as an action item, so I think it's probably best to formalize it by a motion to continue and a vote on that, just to.
So moved.
Is it a motion to continue for a specific date?
No.
Or for a non-specific date?
Staff's recommendation to continue it for a date.
Good. I'll make a motion to postpone this item for a non-specific date.
Okay. Second.
okay, first the second. Let's do a roll call vote.
I have a first from Commissioner Powers and a second from Commissioner Howdy. Commissioner Powers?
Aye.
Commissioner Howdy?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Dahlgren?
Yes.
Commissioner Herzog?
Yes.
Thank you.
I forgot to ask
Oh, so this is continued, so it's not appealable.
Right, yeah, no action.
So we're gonna go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone.